morning, everyone. Yes, sorry, we are recording. I forgot to mention this. Thank you, Caro. Good morning, everyone, and yeah, very warm welcome to our training on applying AI tools in the Horizon Europe proposal process. We are very happy to see so many of you here today. In fact, we've never had, at least in my case, a webinar by the FFG Academy with so many registrations, and that's a clear sign to us how relevant and timely this topic has become across Austrian and European institutions. So, of course, I asked ChatGPT in this case to provide us with a picture for today's training, and here it is. So I'm going to be using this throughout the webinar. So I hear someone. Yes. So just to briefly introduce us, my name is Astrid Höberts. I'm from the Austrian Research Promotion Agency, FFG, from the Department of European and International Programs. I'm a trainer for many years in the FFG Academy, and plus I'm also a national contact point for Horizon Europe in health, but that's kind of irrelevant today. So Sarah, do you want to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, I am also your co-trainer today from the side of FFG. My name is Sara Gasparoni. I'm a national contact point for Digital Cluster 4, and I don't have such a long experience as Astrid in FFG Academy, but I'm making it right now. So welcome.
Thank you as my co-trainer today. And then we have Carolina in the background for technical support. So a few words about us. I'm sure most of you know us as European International Programs at FFG. We host all national contact points for the EU Framework Program. So in short, we are here to support your European funding journey, and national contact points are national advisors. All assistance is free of charge, and we are financed by the governments of each country. So not only in Austria, but also in all other European countries and many other countries worldwide. Our job is to give you support for Horizon Europe proposal writing. And we do this via many different services. Not going to go into everything here, but today you are attending one of our training center, FFG Academy trainings. We offer a lot of other trainings, also on proposal writing, for example, or project management. And we also have a lot of online information packages. The other services you see on this slide. And yeah, if you have any questions about Horizon Europe, just feel free to contact us. So a few words on netiquette and how to ask questions. We are a lot of people today, and so you're muted by default. As I mentioned, if you have problems with your bandwidth because we're so many people, yeah, turn off your video camera during the presentations, but so far things seem to be going fine. So any technical questions, please ask them to Carolina via the chat. And the chat to all really only in case we use this as a tool, but otherwise, please ask all your questions or comments or statements using this Q&A window, F&A or Q&A, depending on if you have German or English settings. This is open to everyone. You can also vote questions by others up. There's an option to upvote. And we will get to these in the dedicated Q&A sessions and in the final discussion. You can also react, or maybe we have time to ask oral questions. This is via the React window in the Zoom bar. So why this training today? So we see an overwhelming interest by you today, and this really reflects the rapidly changing times we're all experiencing. On this slide now, I copied a few headlines from recent years and recent months. So already in 2023, the European Research Council raised concerns about the use of AI in proposals. And this year really, also the NIH, for example, and in Horizon Europe this year, application numbers have been skyrocketing, especially in some programs. And many comments have been asking, is AI to blame? blame in a negative sense. As national contact points, we've also been observing this trend. We receive questions on AI usage. We noticed the changes in proposals and therefore felt the need to develop training dedicated to this topic. And I think looking at the numbers today, this seems to have been the right intuition. So these AI tools, they are reshaping our scientific work, our administrative processes, and of course, the way we write proposals. At the same time, they raise important questions about quality, integrity, fairness, data protections, and many more. So our aim today of this webinar is to explore how AI tools can be effectively applied throughout the Horizon Europe proposal process. So the objectives of today are, first of all, to provide you a guidance on when and how generative AI tools can support this proposal phase. And I want to stress the word guidance. By no means we can give a comprehensive overview of all tools available on the market. It's all very rapidly evolving landscape. But our aim is to provide you with a good starting point for moving ahead. We will hear about the current Horizon Europe rules and perspectives on what's allowed in the application process, in the evaluation procedures. And we want to exchange practical experiences and examples. What we cannot achieve in these 3 hours is, of course, as I said, to touch on every tool available. We also not talking about AI as a research topic. That's a different theme. So how to use AI for example, medical imaging or technology development. And we're also not talking about how to use AI in your organizations for meetings or any internal analysis. The focus really is on proposal writing. And therefore, we've developed this agenda for the next 3 hours. We are currently in the welcome and introduction. The next speaker will be the European Commission, which will give a perspective on AI and proposal writing. Then we have invited 3 short statements by an applicant, a grant office in a university, and an evaluator on their views. We will have a very short break to catch a coffee. And then at 11, our keynote lecture by Daniel Mertens on next level grant writing using AI assistance. The last 30 minutes, we will end with open discussions, questions to the speakers, and we will end at 1 o'clock. The slides will be available after the webinar. Also, the recording, although this might take a while because we're going to have to provide subtitles for our website and check that all the subtitles are correct. So we are in the final phase of Horizon Europe. Today's webinar is applicable to all programs, all pillars that you see on this slide. And last week, the last work program of Horizon Europe was launched with the calls 26 and 27. So very timely because the calls have just been published last Thursday. So to kick off, I would like to ask you a question, and Caro, please start the first Zoom survey, which you should hopefully see. Do you plan to submit a proposal in this round of calls? So wait a bit till most people have voted. So the trend is clear. I'm gonna show the results. So 60% yes, they would like to submit a proposal, and the biggest part doesn't know yet. So then it's a good idea to look at the open calls. And 8% clearly say no. So using this AI tools then in the future. And I have another question for you. Do you plan to be supported by AI tools in this process? Yes, no, or not relevant because I don't plan a proposal. We see a very clear trend. 83% say yes, they are planning to be supported by AI tools, and no, 9%. So an overwhelming interest to use this. And yes, thanks you for sharing these insights. And with this, I would like to introduce the first speaker, Miguel Ruiz from the European Commission. He works in Unit H3, Common Service for Business Processes in the Directorate General for Research and Innovation as a business analyst. And in the next 20 minutes, he will talk about the rules and guidance from proposal templates in evaluation procedures and maybe a future outlook. So I will stop my presentation. Okay, Miguel, want to share yours?
I'm sharing.
Yes, it's coming. Yes, and over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Astrid. Yes, my name is Miguel Ruiz. I work in RTD H3 in the Directorate of Research and Innovation, and I'm going to give you an overview of what has been our approach to the use of AI tools in the proposal submission and evaluation processes in Horizon. Let's see, how do I move the slides? Okay. So in my unit, we are responsible of creating a common approach to the implementation of the program of Horizon. And our goal is basically to simplify, harmonize, and document the business processes of the program. We also provide guidance and training to the implementing services, the applicants, and the beneficiaries. An example of this are the Horizon implementation days that we give 1 or 2 times per year. And in our unit, we divide these implementation days, which are informative days about Horizon, in three different points, which is finding opportunities and submitting a proposal. I here put a link to this recording. It's a YouTube session of a whole day where we discuss about funding opportunities and submitting proposals. Then we have the second point, which is about grant agreement preparation and then grant management. Again, I put here links to the events that you can find in the funding and tenders portal. I specifically work in the first point under the submission and evaluation team. And in these trainings, we cover all the steps, all the processes of the Horizon Europe. First, we explain and we discuss about the rules of participation, and then about the specific aspects of the submission process and of the evaluation process. As I said, you can have a look into the link where all the details of the training are explained. I also take the opportunity to advertise the upcoming webinar, the next 20th of January, where we will present the novelties of the new work program adopted, as Astrid said, last Thursday. Here is a tentative agenda, and I will be also participating to discuss about the updates in the templates, for example, and etc. Okay, so if you can join us, you are welcome. This will be online, and it's we will open the year discussing about the novelties of the new work program. But regarding the presentation of today, I will focus in the submission evaluation, as I said, and we already use internally some tools to detect anonymous plagiarism. We have also developed internally chatbots to help us coding, translating, etc., etc. But specifically for submission and evaluation, we have in place already some tools to detect plagiarism, double funding. We have some tool also to help us with allocation of experts to proposals. So when they have to evaluate proposals, this is a key step in the evaluation process, which is very resource demanding. And we are developing, we are already using a tool, but we are improving this tool with the use of AI to help us to allocate and also to find experts based on keywords, etc., etc. Also, the funding and tenders portal has recently incorporated some AI developments to help us with the semantic search. And we are exploring other processes where we could implement AI tools to help us to refine it and to make it more efficient. But when we talk about the use of AI tools, we distinguish clearly in 3 dimensions. First is the preparation of proposals. Second is the use or development of AI systems during a project, which is, I understand, not part of this seminar. But also the last point is about how do we envision the use of AI tools in the evaluation of proposals, which is also a key aspect of our process. So if we focus in the first point, which is about the use of generative AI for preparation of proposals, we immediately came to the conclusion a couple of years ago, almost 3, that it was important to include a disclaimer in the template for the preparation, the part B, where we clearly indicate that the applicants can indeed use AI tools, but they have to exercise caution and they have to be careful when using these tools. Whenever they are using a content generated by AI, they have to review and validate that the content is appropriate and accurate. And they also have to check that it's compliant with intellectual property regulations. We remind them in this disclaimer that they remain fully responsible for the content of the proposal. And we ask them to be transparent in disclosing which AI tools they have used and how they have used these tools. As I said, this is a disclaimer which was included in the templates almost 3 years ago. And we remind the applicants that they are fully responsible for the content of the proposal. And we ask them to be transparent in disclosing these tools, how and where they were used. Basically, we require them to verify the accuracy, the validity, and appropriateness of the content. We ask them to give citations about the tools. They have to provide a list of sources used to generate content. Of course, they have to be conscious about the potential for plagiarism, and they have to acknowledge the limitations of AI tools, that they could have biases or hallucinations. So in summary, in the preparation of proposals, we agree that applicants may use these tools to prepare proposals, but we ask applicants to be fully transparent up toward us and declare the use of these tools, so in such a way that the tools can be identified. Also importantly, we inform experts when evaluating proposals that by no means a proposal can be negatively evaluated because they use AI tools. So the experts evaluators cannot penalize a proposal because they use AI to prepare it. So in this aspect, we are aligned about how to prepare proposals. And then another aspect we consider was what happens with the development of AI during a project. I will quickly about this point. This is specifically described in the program guidance in the point 19. In the recently updated guidance. And basically, we ask applicants working to develop AIs at any time that they develop a system or they are using a system of AI during a project, it has to be technically robust, accurate, and reproducible. And this system should be able to deal with and inform about possible failures, inaccuracies, and errors. And it has to be proportionate to the assessed risk posed by the system itself. The system has to be socially robust, they have to be reliable and function as intended, and they have to be able to provide a suitable explanation of its decision-making process. This is about the systems that are developed during a project. And in fact, we during the evaluation, during the scientific evaluation of the proposals, the experts answer an additional question as part of the individual evaluations. And if they answered yes to this question, they must assess the technical robustness of these systems as part of the excellence criteria. In this step, moderators and call coordinators must ensure during the consensus phase that the robustness can be sufficiently addressed And if they need, they have to ask experts of artificial intelligence, and they have to include them into the pool of evaluators to perform this assessment. In fact, there is an update already with the Work Program 25. It was agreed that the assessment of robustness of AI will be only performed when this is specifically set in the topic description or conditions, which means that a big majority of the calls, they don't need to go through this process. This is not mandatory anymore, and only when this is required in the topic conditions. And then the last step is about using generative AIs for the evaluation of proposals. We remind evaluators that any use of these tools remains their own responsibility. They are responsible for keeping the confidentiality of this information, and they have to ensure that it is adequately protected. And we remind also evaluators that they are responsible for adopting appropriate measures to ensure the protection of personal data. They should be aware of the risk of breaching confidentiality obligations, which may be subject to the measures outlined in their contract. So we basically remind them that they are bound by the contract with the Commission when evaluating proposals, and by using these tools, they may be breaching the confidentiality clause of these contracts. And we remind them that they should avoid over-reliance on these tools and acknowledge its potential limitations. Again, the possible hallucinations and biases of these tools. What we do is we inform experts evaluators once they are contracted for performing evaluations. We provide the services with briefings slides for experts that you can find in the Funding and Tenders portal. And we included specific points about the use of AI by evaluators. First, we remember them that they have to be aware that the use of these tools may indeed breach the confidentiality requirements of their contract, and we remind them about this. And recently, only in the 1st of December, we have updated these slides to include a specific slide about the use of these tools by evaluators, where they remember them that they must not delegate the evaluation of proposals to AI tools. Of course, they may use these tools to perform only side tasks like collect background information, but of course not for the assessment of proposals, and only if the confidentiality of the proposal information and the protection of the personal data is ensured. And we remind them also that they have to take necessary precautions to potential limitations of these tools. Again, we stress that they are responsible for keeping the confidentiality of this information and also the protection of the personal data included in these proposals. And again, we remind them that they must be aware that breaching confidentiality of personal data obligations may have serious consequences to the contract that they sign with us. So our approach in the Commission from the very beginning regarding AI tools is that we promote the responsible use of these tools, but we request transparency from applicants. In this sense, we are aligned with the living guidelines developed by the ERA Forum, which is, of course, a living document, and it is regularly updated. And in these guidelines, there are specific takeaways, and we, as a funding organization, we support applicants in using these tools transparently and with responsibility. Finally, we are already having internal discussions on how do we see the upcoming next framework program. And we are already discussing ideas for the use of AI tools in our processes, and with the final idea of having a more refined application process. Please don't take this as granted. These are just ideas after a brainstorm exercise that we are performing these days. But I wanted to share with you these ideas that come is, for example, we are thinking about kind of a AI tool that could explain the content of calls to applicants, some kind of tool that could summarize the content of the calls, which sometimes is a big amount of information, to help applicants to decide to which call apply and how to create a consortia, etc., etc. A second point we are discussing is about how to improve the allocation of proposals to experts and to perform checks about conflict of interest, or how to find the best expertise to evaluate specific proposals. And as I said, we already have a tool to do that, but we are working to do this tool even better and to also help the evaluators to perform their evaluations in a more efficient way. We are, of course, discussing about the possibility to provide even a European Commission developed tool to support the work of evaluators. We are thinking about the possibility to have AI tools to help us to do pre-screening of proposals in some calls where we expect a high number of proposals, to do a first pre-screening and to get to the second stage only the best ones in a very efficient way. We have very also interesting ideas like support multilingualism, maybe allowing applicants to support to apply and to submit the proposals in their native language, and then we may take advantage of AI to translate them to our work language, which is English or French, and then to perform the evaluation in native languages. And these are just ideas. Some of them are really difficult to implement, but we are at this moment already discussing how to incorporate AI tools to our processes to make them more efficient, and, for example, to achieve a less time to grant as it is today. Okay, so I hope I was clear in this presentation. I covered the 3 dimensions that we see about the use of these tools, and basically to remind that we understand that the appearance and the use of AI is reshaping how the proposals are written. They are in the positive aspect, they are amplifying access and productivity, but also in the negative aspects, they are creating pressure of overwhelming the funding system. We are aware of this. The challenge ahead, in any case, for us is not whether to use AI, but how to govern its use in a fair way. And we are following these developments, of course, with interest, and we continue to ensure fairness and equal treatment during the evaluation process. And with this, I finish. I'm happy to discuss with you and to have a fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miguel, for this great presentation. And you're getting lots of applause already. Hold on. So with this, we can move on to questions. And I think I've seen a number already. Let me open it. So I have to organize myself. So the first question is, which tools are you using to detect plagiarism, and do they work equally well across the wide LLM model landscape?
We are using, I'm not muted, right? Yeah.
Yes, it's fine. I can hear you.
We are using a tool which is developed internally from us. So we don't use commercial tools. We follow this policy to develop our own tools. That's why sometimes it takes time, but we are improving one tool that was already developed a few years ago, of course, not using specifically AI. And now we are improving it, adding AI capabilities to these tools. So it's an internal developed tool, what we use, and it helps a lot us to save time, because sometimes we have to navigate pools of experts of thousands and thousands, and we try to find the best experts that we have in our database. And yeah, so it's an internal tool.
Okay, thank you. The next 2 questions are on how to declare the use of generative AI in the proposal. Where do you declare it in the proposal itself? Would it make sense to add a checkbox to the application instead? And can you provide examples of transparency disclaimers? What details are expected?
Well,
so this is about declaring it in the proposal.
Yeah, you declare the use of these tools in the same place where you declare references. scientific references or bibliography. And well, when the hype of AI came or raised, we always tried not to get crazy in this topic or in any other topic to add complexity to the templates, which are quite complex by itself. So we decided to go to the approach of including a disclaimer and make it no step farther from that. You are invited. We ask for transparency to inform us that you use AI for your own benefit, because when the evaluators go through the proposal, they will appreciate that they have as much information as they can about the evaluation. Of course, the evaluators will still evaluate excellence, impact, and so on. They will not evaluate at all if you use AI tools or not. But I think from the perspective of an applicant, I think it's good to take the transparency approach and to inform about the use of these tools.
And I continue with my own questions. Do you have any statistics on how many people declare the use in their proposals?
I don't have statistics about this. I agree that we ask for this information, but again, we don't do a complete follow-up of this because we don't think this is critical for us at the moment. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. The next question with the most votes. Are you worried AI-managed pre-screening might show bias? For example, it could favor proposals coming from institutions who were already allocated funding several times.
Yes, we are very worried about the mistakes that AI can introduce, and that's why we are not embracing it as soon as we can. We have to do tests, we have to do pilots. We want to develop our own tools, liable tools. We have a risk of reputational risk if it doesn't work properly. So we are aware of all these limitations. We have an IT team which is very competent about it, and we will not, or we will try to avoid taking too adventurous steps about it. So yes, we are aware of these risks.
Okay, thank you. I continue with a question on pre-screening. For this pre-screening, will this be communicated? What you will check for, the criteria? I know it's in the future, but
yes.
Maybe you know already.
I was hesitant about the last slide, but I wanted to be transparent with you also. We are discussing about these ideas. Some of them, we label them as crazy ideas also, I have to be honest. These are just food for thought. I'm happy to take with me, at the end of the day, more crazy ideas from you. This is just under discussion. We have to balance. We have to see what is achievable, what is not. Please don't take these ideas and this slide
I know
seriously.
I know these are just ideas, and it's FP10, which is still a few years to go. But I appreciate you thinking about it. Yeah. I think the next question we more or less answered. If the proposal doesn't include this disclaimer, what happens? Do evaluators treat it differently from proposals that openly say that they have used it?
No, I replied to
there's
this,
no penalty. Yeah.
There is no penalty for this.
Yeah. The next question is from a speaker, Georg. How do you check if the admitted AI use is accurate and not actually much more? I guess that's hard to check. Oh,
yeah.
Can you say anything to this?
No, what I can say is that we also had the idea, which I removed from the slide, is about using AI tools to detect AI content. But since this is not 100% reliable, we decided not to go for it, because you have to understand that when we deal with thousands and thousands of proposals, and we have in mind to refine and to make a more efficient process, we cannot just impose on ourselves checking these kind of things. We focus in excellence. This is a research funding organization, and we don't go into the tools used to prepare the proposal as if we can avoid it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. The next question is also looking into the future. It's again about the pre-screening. I can see this causes a lot of interest in the audience. How are you going to do it? In case the pre-screening will be done by an AI tool in the future, how do you prevent that applicants will have to use AI tools to write proposals for AI evaluation tools? So it's kind of, if you know about the criteria.
To add on this, When I mentioned pre-screening, we already have in mind a two-stage proposal where we invite applicants to submit a short proposal, and then basically what it will be evaluated is the scientific idea, the excellence of the novelty of this idea, and we have to see in which way AI can help us to quickly identify the best ideas. This is more or less the idea, or crazy idea. We will see if it's possible or not.
Yeah, okay. Have any irregularities been identified through the use of AI regarding the use of AI? So I guess, have you had any observations in the latest round of proposals, changes in proposals?
What I can share is about the evaluation of proposals. Sometimes experts come to the call coordinators with questions. Okay, this is obviously created by the AI, it's a mistake. What do I do about this? And then we remind to them, focus on excellence, focus on, because we don't hire the experts to detect AI use or not. They have to, we bring their expertise to the evaluation, and they have to focus on these aspects.
Yeah. Thank you. Do you plan to provide European Commission generated and privacy checked AI tools for the evaluators in the future? So I guess it's about they're actually not allowed to use it with open tools. So are you planning to provide any tools for the evaluators?
This is discussed. It's technically is quite difficult. I mean, not to develop a tool, but a tool that we are totally sure that is worth. But this was one of the first ideas that came to our mind. If we could provide an internal tool, even a temporary access to experts to use this in the same way that you can access to ChatGPT, but this could be a very positive way to solve many issues about breaching confidentiality. We are assessing the technicality about this. We are thinking about this, but today I cannot even assure that this will happen at all. But we are exploring this. Yeah.
Thank you. I think it's an important point, because otherwise you cannot guarantee. Yeah, you can also not check that the confidentiality is not breached.
Correct.
So let me see what get most. Take the next two questions and then we move on. Again, the pre-screening, how can you make sure that this AI tool does not hallucinate? Yeah.
I guess at the end, the answer is always a mix of solutions. It's not only AI, but with a human behind. But we have to see how this could be implemented and how this could be used. Yeah.
I think the next question we have answered: transparency demands for reviewers in using AI. Controls. Yeah, controls are not really in place, I guess, for the evaluators. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Pretty much answered this. Yeah, with this, okay, one last question. It's an interesting one. What about the use of AI in ethics reviews? Don't know if you can say anything to this.
I think I cannot add much more about it. Sorry.
Okay. So with this, I thank you for this first round of questions. I can see I wasn't able to check it now that there's an activity in the chat also. So I remind you to ask questions, please, in this Q&A windows. And I cannot look in the chat right now. Maybe, Sarah, you can answer questions in the chat if you spot anything. Yeah, right. I focused on the Q&A window right now. And with this, we move on. And as I said, we've prepared 3 statements now from 3 different perspectives. Applicants, grant office evaluator, strictly 5 minutes. I will signal to the speakers when this time is over. And we start with Georg Melzer. He's the managing director of EUTEMA Research Services, written and managed many EU proposals for the last decade. And I asked him to share his experience as an applicant. Georg, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Astrid. Georg Melzer-Venturi here. I was really surprised that from the people that were going to write the grant, 9% said that they're not going to use AI, and I think that's a huge mistake. Having said that, AI is a pain and a burden, and one of my first when I was listening to Ruiz, I said, it seems to be the consequences of misuse of the AI on the evaluator side is extremely limited, basically to the whatever 300 euros that they get per proposal. and if you think that there's an IP leak that's involved in using it. So I think there's a lot of ifs and buts, which is also a big problem when you're writing a proposal, right? Because what you want to be absolutely clear on is that you only use the pro versions that do not train on your research data, because you are submitting confidential information from a group that is not yours and submitting it to another body. So I think using AIs is almost a must because it makes it a little bit better. And if you're the only one not using it, chances are you will fall behind slightly. Why? Because there's a couple of things that AI can do amazingly well. Yeah, and there's some things that it's absolute garbage at. If you throw in the call text and say, draft me a work plan, you will get a very average working plan that lacks any ingenuity or greatness, and you'll be a perfect 12-point proposal, but with 12 points nobody wins. So I think when we use AI in our writing, we do a lot of human work first. The whole idea generation, the concept generation, and then we use AI mostly for checking, for shortening, for rephrasing, for summarizing. The abstract is great. Stuff like that. It's really, really good. And a lot of the work that took a long time, basically when simple stuff, you're adding a new work package and say, okay, I need everything renumbered. I need all my tasks renumbered. I need my figures renumbered. I need everything renumbered. Yeah, it's stuff that took you ages. Yeah, and that's all coming out and can be automated. Looking at consistency, looking at using the same terminology, making sure that when a partner leaves that they're actually gone, and even though there's a typo in the name somewhere where the search function won't find it, the AI function will find it. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do. On the other hand, there's things that we've been seeing that don't work really well. I mean, it seems to have been taught on very complex English literature. And sometimes you have the feeling that this is not, the text you want to present to a senior from a country that's not a native English speaker, who's not so great. So the idea of using AI, from what I understood what you're saying, you're using AI to translate the proposal into the national language of the evaluator. I mean, that makes a lot of sense, obviously with all the questions involved in does the translation work really well, but that will create this, the English native speakers always had a little bit of an advantage over the non-native speakers. So that's a lot of, there's a lot of potential there for making the English more readable, but you really have to prime the system to get it to the English that you want, because that won't always be the output that you get. What's also not good, for example, if a template changes. Now, if you, we use basically a box of a couple prompts, and in there it already knows what we do and who we are. So it will suggest, yeah, you're doing this, and but then sometimes it grabs an old template. So there's, sometimes the second, like the data management and the open data or something used to be in two different sections or two different paragraphs. Now it's in one. And a lot of times the AI will make the mistake of using the old format and not the new one. And even though you've primed it and said this is the new template. So there's a lot of randomness, which is obvious because at the end of the day, the AI system is what's the most probable thing to come next, which has a degree of randomness in the variety. Maybe back to the beginning real quick. Idea generation. The idea generation of AI, at least I'm using it right now, maybe it's just a limit of our competence, has been that it's not good at going above and beyond. and good proposals go above and beyond. And I think that's would then summarize and finalize my statement for right now.
Excellent. That was great timing. Thanks for these first insights. What you used it for, what you think it's not good for. Also very good insights. And we move on to the next statement. That's Mario Müller. He's from the University of Graz, Research Management Service. And yeah, the team at this university was one of the first in Austria to experiment with the use of AI tools for their own researchers. And thank you for telling us a bit more about this approach. Over to you, Mario.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me. And I can only say that I was also surprised a bit by the outcome of your initial question. I see a lot more reluctancy, but it's probably not significant here when you're asking this question in an AI webinar, if people want to use AI tools or not. So I see much more reluctancy, and I think it's actually also not evenly spread, coming from a university with a lot of faculties and different research areas. I see that it's quite different depending on the faculty or even department that you're talking to. And that's quite for a good reason. For language is a different thing when it comes to natural sciences. Well, it's a generalization, of course, but when you're talking about natural sciences, it's more a tool and a means to transport information, while in SSH, it's also very often an integral part of the research and of the science itself. So therefore, there is a lot more reluctancy when it comes to SSH in my perspective than natural sciences. Yeah, you were right. I was probably among the first ones in Austria in the university area to jump on this topic, and there was also a lot of reluctancy among my colleagues, and it took about a year until there was an event where, with a very interesting showcase, a researcher showed how to write a proposal in a very short time that was 80% mature. And then we started this internal group that I'm now chairing about use of AI tools. And I still think that actually it is underestimated, the topic still. For one thing that I was also surprised today was this comment that the Commission is thinking about evaluating or preparing a tool for evaluators, because actually the one thing that I had thought everybody was agreeing on, that nobody really wants this AI ping pong. So the applicants are writing AI texts, and then the Commission is using AI tools to evaluate these AI texts. Actually, personally, I think that we are at the end of this proposal writing tool, and we will come to an end in the form that we see it now. What the future will bring, nobody really knows. It's extremely difficult to tell, but there are things on the table, like doing a lottery even, or just evaluating with AI tools in a pre-selection and then inviting people for interviews, things like this. But as far as I know, there is really no satisfying solution. In my daily life, it has made a huge difference. I use AI tools practically all the time, and for all the tasks that I am free to use them. We don't have any regulations concerning AI tools in proposals, since there are regulations from the funding agencies that are not uniform at all. And actually, even if in Horizon Europe it's not uniform, because for ERC you don't need to specify that you used AI tools. So even there it's not homogeneous. So we totally leave it to the researchers, and I think it should be the responsibility of the researchers to judge for themselves what tools they want to use and how they want to use it. So I tell them openly about the risks, and I offer to use AI tools for the support, but if they don't want it, then I of course don't use them, and I never put anything into an AI tool, not even our internal GPT that we have at the University of Graz, without the explicit allowance of all people involved. So the thing is, we are in the lucky position at our university because we have an AI tool that's run internally, or not internally, but on European servers without the access of the big companies. So we can be sure that the models don't use it for their training. And therefore, we can provide these tools to employees and our students, even now lately, without taking these big risks. So with that, I think I'm at the end of the 5 minutes, and I'm happy to take questions later on. Thanks.
Thank you, Mario. Yes, also perfect timing. Thanks for this insight, how you do it internally and what you tell your researchers. Thank you very much. And with this, we move to the last statement. Luis Bravo Martins, he's Vice President of the XR Safety Initiative Europe, and he's here today in his role as an expert evaluator for the Commission. I took from your LinkedIn profile that you've been doing this since 2019 in different programs. So thanks for your first statement on the evaluator's experience. Over to you, Luis.
Absolutely. Thank you, Astrid. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. So yes, I have been doing evaluation since 2019, both for Horizon, Creative Europe, EIC, and also for private organizations. And yes, so after some project reviews, it's easy to identify AI-generated content. So the flow, the rhythm breaks, the repetitions also happen, the text structure becomes poor. So overall, it's also interesting to see that, especially this year, it was interesting to see that across several proposals, the same reasoning appeared and the same kind of text structure appeared. So it was easy to like highlight that was AI generated content. And this happens more with countries that are not non-English speakers. So most possibly they communicate in a different language and then they translate it using Gen AI. I don't know, but overall I saw that happening with several specific proposals coming from from specific countries. I also see this happening much more in the excellence and impact sections of proposals. So topics that are sometimes seen as minor, as like gender balance description or dissemination, are sometimes target to AI usage, which is kind of a misunderstanding from the applicant's point of view, because more and more as we have more applications coming in, of course, each and every detail matters. I also find an uptake and a positive point of Gen AI that also happened this year was the usage of AI generated illustrations, schemes, mood boards, and that's okay. But namely for system architectures or to identify what kind of aesthetics were being brought to the project. So that was really interesting, but at the same time, they need to be thoroughly reviewed, because sometimes what was in the scheme was against or was not according to what was being described by the proposal itself. Also, another thing that unfortunately AI brought us, evaluators, was this overkill of scientific references. Suddenly, we had a lot of proposals that had a lot of scientific references that, of course, were very hard for us to confirm one by one. So, of course, I also try on my side to identify AI usage, but at the same time, I also know that these tools that I use are limited and they're fallible. And in my work as an evaluator, actually, I already had several contexts. So I already had contexts where I wasn't able to use at all AI as a whole. I had contexts where research was allowed for me to use AI, but I also part of a private pilot where I had the opportunity, or I had an AI tool that actually created a preview of the analysis of the project and translated it, if I wanted to my own language. My 2 cents, I found that very underwhelming, and it was not so interesting in the sense that I completely felt that it was a translated version of the document itself, and I felt like I wasn't so, it wasn't so easy. It was harder for me to understand what was in the proposal. So yeah, I would say as an advice to applicants, I would say that it's very important always to justify the sections with previous assumptions, so across or throughout the proposal. So just dropping all those very round and sometimes nonsensical and generalistic texts that are obviously AI generated is not at all a positive contribution to the proposal. And it's also very, very important to refine the number of references and confirm also the research references, because sometimes they do not exist. They're just hallucinations. Also, another very important part, and especially this happens with AI-generated images, gender bias. So I see a lot of men, I don't see women, and this is sometimes very, very important when we're talking about topics that have different kinds of applications. They have a physical element, they have equipment, they regard like specific applications across professional realms that demand for a different uptake from a gender perspective. Maybe we can have, and this is maybe a crazy idea to Miguel, maybe we can have an AI assistant that can recommend best practices to applicants when they are applying, or at least identify the very similar texts out there across proposals and flag them as AI-generated text. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruiz, for this first statement. I think very good points. What you observe as an evaluator on generic paragraphs, especially in some parts of the proposals, and also this references hallucinating. It's a very interesting point. Yes, thank you very much. So thank you for these first 3 speakers on the initial statements. And before we move on to our keynote lecture by Daniel, we'll have a 5-minute break for you to refresh yourself, get a coffee, and Daniel will start at 11:05. Thank you very much. A small refreshment. We are recording again. I remind everyone to use the Q&A windows for real questions. I saw a lot of activity in the chat. It's good to discuss there, but if you want to pose a question to the speakers, please use the Q&A window. And with this, we move on to our keynote lecture today by Daniel Mertens. He's a biochemist and a lecturer, currently still group leader at the German Cancer Research Center and University of Ulm. But in addition to his research work, he has been working as a skills trainer for scientists for many years. I listened to your lecture about a year ago on next level grant writing, and that's why when I planned this webinar, I contacted you, and very happy that you agreed to talk today. And you asked us to pose one question at the beginning, which is this one, and then I hand over to you. How much do you use LLMs already? So from 1 to 5, rarely or all the time? A mixed picture. I'll share it in a second. So I think not everybody is back from their coffee, so that's the result. So Daniel, what do you make of this? And I hand over to you.
Thank you, Astrid. Thanks for having me. And folks, I can tell you, you're a perfectly normal crowd. It's a mixed picture. We all struggle with the speed of what is currently happening. I've put out here these pictures of juggling. That's how I feel using those large language models. And it's difficult for users, but more so for institutions and faculties to decide on how do we actually want to handle this? How do we want to address this? What are we doing? And speed is still picking up. So there's an urgent need for discussion and for exchange. And that's why I'm so happy to be here, to be invited to this, because exchange discussion is exactly what we need. What I'm going to try and do today here is I want to actually focus on quality. Most people, mostly older people, I'm going to show you numbers, think about increasing efficacy with those large language models, when actually you can use them to increase the quality. And we're going to discuss how. I'm going to share with you how. And fortunately, among the young people, this is becoming more and more prevalent. Half of them, I'm going to show you the numbers, actually realize that you can increase the quality of your output. So actually, I think I'm coming from leukemia research. I'm going to share that with you in a sec. I think actually in leukemia research, it's unethical to not use large language models anymore, because the leukemia patient actually doesn't care who is doing the research as long as his leukemia is being handled better. So we're going to start with why. Why should we use it? How does it impact on quality? And then I would strongly encourage people to use it early, because these things are really powerful when it comes to conceptualizing, to idea generation, to usage of literature. I'm going to share some examples with you. And you can obviously take them all the way. What I think is the advantage now that we have these idea generation and writing machines is that we as natural scientists can actually step away from the actual texting, can delegate this, and then work on what is, I think, the more scientific side of things, actually considering what kind of research do we actually want to do and which one do we decide to spend the resources on. I'm going to show you literature search. What I'm also going to show you is I've done an evaluation yesterday where you can use those large language models not only for doing a really well-founded literature search. Obviously, you're not doing that with ChatGPT. What has developed is now agentic AI, which can actually evaluate things pretty well. So many people are reluctant, I'm going to share numbers with you again, are reluctant to have AIs only doing the assessment, even though the number is pretty high. Who would accept that, I think. But what you can do is you can use those large language models there's providers now that provide assistants. I'm not using them tools anymore. I'm calling them assistants that help you make your grant, your manuscript better on a conceptual basis, which is really amazing. And they're now already on at least my eye level, and I'm going to share that with you. And what I find is one of the most interesting current topics is to use local models. I'm going to share with you the assessment that my local model that I'm running here on my laptop did of our paper. And this was not as good as the foundational platform that's from QED, but already excellent in helping you get better in quality, because that's what I think we should aim for. And this is a local model where you don't share data with nobody, which is obviously which many people are looking for. So let's go back at why should we actually use them? The most important question of them all, why? How is it going to affect the speed and the quality of the output of knowledge workers? So why should we use them? Well, because these things have become really clever. This is September 24, where most of the data has been trained. What you see here is an intelligence test. It's hard to measure intelligence because we mostly can't agree on what we want to measure. This is the Mensa test Norway, which seems to be a common means. In blue, you see the humans. This is normalized to 100. So the average human has an IQ of 100. And you saw that those models at that time approached 90. And then many people said, now we're at the plateau because all the data has been trained. And of course, this is, by the way, the biggest theft in human history. But this, of course, is not correct, that there's no more increase in quality. because then was when the first reasoning model came on the market, which is 0-1. They called it 0-1 because the step forward was so huge. And these things go in a structured way. And this is also how you should, how we did the writing. I'm going to share with you our first manuscripts that we published using machines. The more structure you put in, the more structure you have, and you can also use the large language model to help you with structuring, the better the quality is going to be. And of course, it doesn't end there. We have a DeepSeek, which is a mixture of experts model, which is even better because it's specializing. And this is also good for local models. So the local models that you run are usually a mixture of experts model because they don't need so much compute. And what I'm also going to share with you are now assistants that are actually collaborating. They are working together. It's called agentic. It's with autonomy. And this is increasing quality even more. Why are we so powerful on this planet? Because we're not very powerful animals. We work together. And this is how we change the face of the planet, the Anthropocene. And this is exactly what's happening right now with those large language models. September 24, March 25, already several models now approached an IQ of 120. I'm sorry for the small lettering here. This is put together very crudely. You're going to realize with my material and with my slides that some of those are not finished. I think the speed is just too high. This is Mensa Norway again in black. You see now many models have reached 120. September 25, the first model clocked 140. Remember, average human is 100. So why should we use these things? Because they are so clever. And we should use them to increase the quality of our output. I think that's what we should aim for. And there's studies on this. This is between the Harvard Business School, Boston Consulting Group, where they grouped 759 consultants. That's a lot of people, 7% of their whole working force, into 3 groups, one without access, one with access to GPT-4 at that time, and one with access plus instructions on how to use it. They told them to do 18 different tasks. I put some here on the right-hand side. It took them 5 hours to complete, so a lot of work. And then they measured the speed, and the quality was graded by 2 humans, okay, senior consultants. I'm just sharing the one panel that's really relevant, I think, and this is this one. This is the quality increase that you see. So what you see on the y-axis is the number of consultants, x-axis, the quality increase, and you can see that those that used AI were much better in quality. So with a machine, you can get 12% more tasks finished, which is nice. You can be faster if you want, and that's also really excellent. What I think we should really aim for, we should use these machines to increase the quality of our output. So how does that work? How do you increase the quality? Why is this possible? I think there's 3 reasons, 3 fundamental reasons at the current stage. So they have a much larger memory. You can nowadays upload 10 gigabyte of files to ChatGPT, 1 gigabyte to Perplexity. They have a context window Claude of 300 pages. So that means that they can handle much more information than this neural network up here, which you can use to increase the quality of your output because you can overlook much more data. We're not going to talk about data analysis today, which is one of the key points that I find really helpful, where they're going to help us because they're going to objectify, they are objectifying data analysis and visualization. They can provide you with more ideas. Linus Pauling, how do you get a good idea? Well, you start with many ideas. I've been told, you know, that they are just copying from the internet. That's incorrect. They've been trained on the internet and they use the information there for role playing. Currently, there's still an issue with real world understanding, but there's people running around in Silicon Valley with a cap where, because many people say, you know, they're just plagiarizing parrots. And the point is, I'm going to share with you today tools and assistants. If you can't differentiate anymore, if you are discussing with a plagiarizing parrot on par, actually, that's why many people now wear their cap. Actually, that's what this neural network is doing as well. We're reading, we're looking at all the information out there, and then we're synthesizing, putting together, and that's exactly what these large language models are doing as well. What I think is really interesting, and that's something I'm going to share with you today as well, if you want, external perspective. You can now ask, what are the reviewers going to ask about this manuscript or about this grant? How is this audience not going to understand the first slides? And what people are not, many people, including me, are not really fully aware of yet is personalization. What people ask me, Daniel, can you give me a list of the best tools currently? I say, folks, the time of lists is over, because you can now ask the gatekeepers like Gemini or Perplexity, what is the, and I'm going to share that with you, what is the best literature tool for me as a leukemia researcher for doing this project in this moment? And then you get your personalized list for this moment for your specific problem. Personalization is very powerful. So you can now ask, how is not only the reviewers, what are the reviewers going to ask? If you have a review panel, you can actually ask, what is this person going to ask for questions to this project? That's personalization. And this external perspective was not possible before. It's still not objective because we talked about the biases of these large language models, but it's definitely going to be more objective than if you ask one colleague, 2, 3, 4, 5 colleagues, because this is an average. They've been trained on the internet of all of the people out there, sorry, of all of the content out there. So it's going to be less biased than your colleagues around you. You should still ask your colleagues, however. So the second study is on how to work with them. This is again between the Harvard Business School, Procter & Gamble. Again, more than 700 professionals who joined there. We have 4 groups, 2 without AI, individuals and teams, and 2 with AI. And again, I'm just showing you the most important panel, which is this one. On the y-axis this time is the quality. And you can see that compared to the individual without AI, if you work together with a human, you're going to be better. Good. Quality is going to increase because you have 2 perspectives on things. You have 2 brains working on the problem. And if you work with AI, with an assistant, okay, not a tool works or doesn't work. The assistant is personalizing interaction, okay? So you can actually, as long as you can explain what you want, we're going to discuss that later, hopefully, you can work with this. The times of buttons and clicks and Windows not doing what you want it to do is over, thank God. So if you work together with this assistant, you can increase the quality of your output compared than working alone. You are on par, actually, compared to working together with another human. So you use them as an assistant on eye level. And I'm going to share with you assessment tools that we use for looking at papers and doing literature search. And it's amazing what these things are doing nowadays. Why the team doesn't profit from AI is unclear. Maybe they've maxed out quality already here. Maybe quality can't increase anymore. Or maybe the team didn't know how to work with the machine, or the machine didn't know how to work with the team. What I want to point out is the yellow bar. So work together with these machines to increase the quality of your output. So let's look at what the scientists actually think. This was done in May 25 by Diana Kwon, was published in Nature. 5,000 researchers, how do they use it? What do they think? AI to write papers. If you look at editing, the vast majority agree that this is making sense. However, I want to move all the way down here is writing the first draft of your paper. We already have 60% who think that under specific conditions, this is okay. 60%. Let's look at evaluation, and I think this is amazing. 1/3 think it's okay to do initial peer review with AI. If you say assist in your peer review by answering questions, it's 60%. And I'm going to share with you, as I said, assessment tools later because I'm so surprised by how good they are, and you can use them to improve the quality of your manuscript, of your grant application if you want. I think that's something that's going to happen. The only thing that we need to address is the uneasy feeling, the unhappiness that people have with this. But I was amazed when I saw these numbers. So let's look at the population a little of those 5,000 people. It's biased towards STEM. Okay, there's not many social scientists in those 5,000, unfortunately. You can see that there's a strong discrepancy over age, as expected. So the older you are, the less happy you are about this. It's the old white man issue, right? What I think is something we really, really need to address is the dark blue bars, because 1/3 of PhD students are actually just using it without disclosure. And this is a fundamental thing that we definitely need to address. I'm going to show you more numbers, which are even more relevant. This is this is now only students, 1,000 students from the UK that were surveyed in February 25. How do they use it? They use it already at a high meta level. Okay, here are explaining concepts, structuring my thoughts, suggesting research ideas. You see that this is increasing substantially from 24 to 25. So the students are using it at a high level already. What I find good, what I find excellent is that they already realize that this is why using it save time 50%, increasing the quality other 50%. I think that's fantastic. We should use them to increase the quality of our output. Now, the next thing I want to say is really not so nice. How many use it? I have no interest in using AI tools, 7%. So 93% are using it, and 13% of institutions support them with it. I just want to let that sink in, this discrepancy. And then this is even worse. What are students scared of? What puts you off using AI? Being accused of cheating by my institution is a bigger impact than getting false results. So these tools are here. I'm going to show you how they are good for increasing the quality of our output. The students know this already. How do we do this? And we should really use them to increase the quality of our output, and we should make people not be scared of being sanctioned, because then 1/3 doesn't disclose that they use it. So why should I be giving this lecture? Who am I? So I'm a leukemia researcher. Okay, I have 2 labs still. One at the German Cancer Research Center, where we attempt to do rocket science, and then we try to translate that towards clinical application at the University Hospital in Ulm in my second lab. Why do I say still? Because it's ending this year. When I started in 23, doing these AI workshops, I did that because I was fundamentally scared. So what happened since then? The next slide is obviously there to impress you, but there's a more fundamental message here as well. So I've published 100 papers, cited now more than 6,000 times. I hope you're really impressed. More important here is the message that the last 2 manuscripts were fully written with the machine and they were published, and reviewers liked the text. So I'm going to share that with you, how we did that. The same holds true for the grants. I'm really good at selling. And I think these machines are excellent in helping you not only to make your science understandable to other scientists, increasing the quality of your grants, but also collaborating. Okay, I'm pretty good at bringing people together, and the machines help me with realizing what could happen. How could these people have conflicts? What are they not going to understand about each other? And this is fantastic and scary at the same time, because these machines are excellent at deducting personality from text, and OmniR1 is excellent at reading emotions from faces and from tone of voice, and that's the really scary part that we should also be discussing regulation about in the European Union. Thank God it's being regulated in the European Union. What I think is much more profound, I've been doing soft skills since 2011, training people in soft skills. Since beginning of 23, when I was so scared, I realized I have to do something, because what the experts say is going to happen is pretty scary. So we need to onboard to control as much as possible what's currently happening and what's going to happen in the future. Since 23, I realized I need to do something. I did 173 workshops. Was count in June. I need to count again. It's probably more. More than 8,000 people. It affects everything. Most people believe that those are writing machines, and I totally agree. They can now write. We as natural scientists actually don't need to write anymore. I don't think so. That's also affecting thesis writing. Very provocative. I don't think the students should be writing a thesis anymore, okay? Because we don't need to learn that anymore. That's my perception. So we can focus on the stuff before that. Because it also affects project management, career management. We're not going to talk about this today. I have a project with 3 universities in the East where we use local machines for career counseling, which is really interesting. What am I going to do with my life next year? All kinds of soft skills, negotiation, leadership, everything is affected by those machines. So what are we going to talk about today? I would like to show you how to do texting. I think we can delegate that fully to the machine. I'm going to show you how to do literature review. These things are now on the stage, on the verge of actually writing review articles on the spot for my question, for my problem, for this neural network that's a trained leukemia researcher and doesn't understand machine learning, for example. You can now get personalized reviews. I'm going to share the tools with you. They're excellent at brainstorming. We're not going to talk a lot about this, but the part in the grant application, that's the project management part, for example, can be excellently supported by machines. That's fantastic. We're also not going to talk about data analysis, objectifying data analysis. That's one of the biggest steps forward, I think, because so far it was based on this neural network, what this neural network thought would be good analysis, and this is a highly subjective machine. And these are much better, much more objective. We're also not going to discuss introspection. What we are going to discuss is data protection. I'm going to share with you how this local network on my laptop actually is good at assessing papers already. And I'm going to share that with you. So let's go back to text, to writing, to the writing process. This is taken from a company, San Francisco Edit. I've boasted I've written 100 papers. Well, these people have written more. That's what they, how they do the writing. They say the writing should be done in one go. What you see here on the y-axis is the time, and on the x-axis how good my brain is working. And they suggest to write in one go because then it's going to be homogeneous, easy to read text. And in order to do that, you need to elaborate really extensively in outline. The outline should actually be 50 to 70% of the final product. And if you have this, then actually you can delegate the writing completely to the large language model, okay? Because they're so good at writing, actually at the end it's pressing a button. If you provide enough information for the large language model to understand what you want, because remember, these things are fully flexible. They are not tools. They're assistants. They do what you want them to do. So here's the text from our first manuscript that we published. If you're a molecular biologist, you can appreciate that the text is fine. It's finished text. You don't need to change anything anymore. And I'm going to, at that time, it was the best writing machine, which was Claude 3 Opus. This is changing all the time. I'm also going to share with you a leaderboard, a link where you understand that you can now, you don't have to ask people anymore which one is the best, because this is changing all the time. So I'm sharing with you the concept that the gatekeeper, Perplexity, is going to take you to the leaderboards where you get the currently best model for writing, for example, or for data analysis, or for whatever. This is from a co-author. I've published 12 papers with Eugen before, and this is in German. He really liked the data. Most of all, however, it's really well written, starting from the introduction all the way to the discussion. Now I know what Eugen thinks about the papers I wrote myself, right? And anyway, the reviewers who knew that this was written with a machine also liked it, and then these papers get published with minor revisions. So how do you do this? Well, obviously you don't tell ChatGPT, please write. It's a process, okay? It's a structured process where you take all the steps, and I'm going to provide you with a link to the material that's actually based on the first writing that we did on the paper, okay? I compiled the 60 pages of thread into a product, into a recipe, and I'm going to share that with you in the thread. Let me just do that. How we did writing with the LLMs. And again, I'm sorry, it's pretty crude and not finished, but I'm starting to accept that this is the new me. So how do you do the writing? Well, you provide all kinds of information to the machine. That's one of the 3 things that you can do with the large language models. I don't believe in prompt engineering because all of those teenager large language models need different type of prompting. So don't worry about prompt engineering. You can use the most versatile tool you have, your language, to make them do what you want. You can do 3 things with all of the large language models. You provide more information. More is always better, more information. You make it ask you questions to find out what is it that I actually want. It's usually the discrepancy between, this is what I wanted, this is what I got. If you're able to describe what that distance is, you're going to be going to where you actually want. And the last thing that you can do if you are working with challenges that involve people is use synthetic people. Make the machine come up with synthetic reviewers, with a synthetic audience, with synthetic students that are going to fill the form, whatever. It's mostly people that you're doing in project management because it's people management. Using synthetic people is a good idea to move forward. So how do you write? Well, you provide state of the art. I'm going to share with you how to do literature search in a sec. You brainstorm gap analysis. You do a gap analysis of what is currently discussed. What are the currently hot topics? What's interesting to the community? If people say, you know, they can detect that this was written with ChatGPT, well, then the person who used the large language model did not take any effort. It took the PhD students in Cologne at the Max Planck 5 minutes to prompt, you know, introduce some typos, use some grammar that's not so good, and then all of these detection tools didn't work anymore. So you can ask it to write in a specific style, okay? I can write now like Barack Obama, or I can make the machine write like me. You just need to provide examples of this is my text, please use this as a template and write like this. And then you, this is interesting, you also look at what does the stakeholder actually want? What does the audience want? This is an underappreciated issue when it comes to presentations, when it comes to grants, when it comes to reviews, and this is also something you include, okay? Then you do a structure process, you set the stage, you define, you provide as much information as possible. Remember, ChatGPT 10 gigabyte that you can upload nowadays. You provide all the information that's there, all the essential resources. You say, this is going to be the outline. And again, that's a process that you can do together with machine. What do I write into the introduction? What do I write? How do I tell the story of the results? What can I be discussing? And you work with the machine. It's a back and forth. Those are assistants, remember? And then it's an iterative back and forth, and then you integrate all the kind of data you want. You go for style when you're almost there, and then you just press the button to go for texting. Now, these machines are not only good at writing, they're also really excellent at reading. And here I didn't take the time to make a slide, so what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to show you, I'm going to share with you how good these things have become. First, let me share with you again the latest, not the latest because that was a few weeks ago. Let me share with you. So here is literature search. This is one of those, again, those gatekeepers, literature search. Which is Perplexity. I'm going to share with you later, 20% of people use ChatGPT for information retrieval. That's not what you use it for. It's a production machine. For finding things in the internet, you use tools that actually give you sources, like Gemini, or I'm using Perplexity all the time now. And this is just giving you tools that at that point were the best suited for literature search. And here is what before I forget it, this is which tool is best for what. Those are called leaderboards, large language model is good at what. These are leaderboards where people test these models continuously. You don't want to do that yourself because it changes all the time. Right. So literature search, let me share that with you, what's currently possible. Here we go. So, right here I have just for you, this is one of the links that I shared with you where it lists all of those tools, all of those wrappers. We're going to talk about the difference between large language models and wrappers, hopefully in a sec. So you have all kinds of what types of literature search you want to do. So here would be high quality. There you go for consensus, Cite AI, SciSpace. I'm going to show you elicit, which is just one of those. So where is it? Here. So what I did here is I used elicit and I optimized the prompt for elicit using the production machine ChatGPT. So I made ChatGPT ask me what is it that I wanted. I provided it with information about the grant that we want to write, which is going to be about large language models in the clinic. And then I made it ask me questions of what I actually wanted. And then ChatGPT produced this hilariously long prompt for elicit. Okay. And then elicit is looking at 1.2 million papers, extracts the top 500, and then reads and extracts information from the top 40. So then you get not only an abstract where you see all the citations of where this is actually written, but you get all kinds of additional things. Here was the characteristics of the included studies. Here is the clinical applications and workflow integration of those different studies. Then here, the next step was adoption and usage metrics. Okay. So elicit is actually providing already a review article, kind of a, not article, but a review of the literature that allows me now to work on a much higher level, on a much higher meta level in deciding what's the best way to move forward. And this is all hands off. Okay, so this has been looking at the papers and looking at the outcomes and looking at this again, all based on where you can actually see where this is coming from, because that's what you need. Because we heard today, you're still fully responsible, so you better make sure that all of this is based and robust. Okay, so this is elicit. The others are having other advantages and disadvantages, and that's why I gave you this link to this Perplexity page. Literature review has changed fundamentally. I can now go on a much higher level, and let me share this crazy thing with you. This is called QED. This is from a company in Israel, a startup. Let me just give you the entry link. And so far, still everybody can use it. At least that was my latest stage for single paper analysis. This thing is now going again in a stepwise process, looking at papers. So what I would strongly encourage that you upload a paper of your own that you really know something about. And what this thing is then doing, it takes a while, but then it's not only looking at what are the major claims in this paper, what's new in this paper, okay, what's new and what's already known, using internet search, obviously. No, it's also identifying gaps, okay? So it's looking at what's the conceptual gap here in this claim, and then it's going to tell you what the background information is, what the identified gap is. It gives you where this is in that paper, and then it suggests either textual edits or potential next steps that you can do with experimentation. So this is excellent for uploading if you want manuscripts or grants to see, what's missing here. It's still focused on wet lab. What I'm going to share with you later, if I manage to keep in time, is that I've compared my local model with this, and it's actually not so bad. This is my local model. This is QED. And this was the analysis that we did here. And my model, with one major exception, actually, my local model actually keeps up with this. And this is fully data secure. I'm going to share with you later how to run local models. You can do this now on your own computer without compromising data security at all. So let's go back to the slides. Right, so I jumped this slide because it's outdated. What you can also do with those machines, as I just mentioned, is looking at giving you feedback. Okay, I've just mentioned this. I've shown you because I had the internet page already open. They are excellent at judging and assessment. So you can, here we still use Claude. That's a long time ago. Right, so you can ask for suggestions for modifications, and you can ask at any level, is it going to be different resources that you want to use? And this is actually not good practice, what I did here, because Claude doesn't have access to the internet. Okay, nowadays I would do that totally differently. At that point, I was still one of those 20% of people who use foundation models for information retrieval. But you see that, it's also on a higher level. If we go for mechanistic explanation, we could see whether the effects are direct or indirect. If we would go for quantification, right here, quantification, we could see whether something is truly dependent on something else. So this is excellent for giving you ideas That's why I would suggest to do this early on conceptual conceptual work. And you can also, and here we did an experiment, we tried what would happen if we would not only upload the manuscript, but also the reviewer comments to make it prioritize which experiments should we be doing when. We also provided it with more information because remember, you can nowadays upload 10 gigabyte to ChatGPT, to the wrapper. And then it would rank priority depending on how important the reviewers rank it and how difficult it will be to perform these experiments. And then it would rank something higher if it's moderately difficult to do and if it was strongly emphasized by the reviewers compared to something else where those things would be changed. And if you provide enough information, it can also give you a weekly plan, okay? When to do what. You can go, I just did workshops on project management. You can go for critical path, risk assessment, stakeholder analysis. All of these things are excellently supported by these large language models to increase, remember, the quality of your work. And that's where we should go, I think, in science. I think it's a waste of taxpayer money to not do that. Project management in the grants. We're not going to look at personality analysis, which I find one of the most interesting because I think it's one of the most scary. I'm also not going to share with you data analysis. What I want to go for is now some fundamental concepts and then go for local models so that we still have some time for discussing questions. So some fundamental points that are going to be interesting to those of you who are beginners, but also to the experts. I'm going to try and tailor this lecture to the variety of you. And I do that even though I'm still made of flesh and blood. I promise you, I'm still a human that's standing in front of the camera. Actually, you can't tell the difference anymore, so you don't know. And that's one of the things that are going to impact massively in education because the machines can personalize education. They can actually deliver to your brain what you need to know with your background at 10 in the morning. It's going to provide me with information that's good for me because my brain is working, and in the evening it's just going to give me a comic strip. At least that's what would happen if I would be the learner. I'm currently learning on how to set up a local model on an Ubuntu server on my desktop, and I'm a leukemia researcher. So those things are now possible because education is changing fundamentally. So, because I'm still human, I'm still going to try to, deliver to both, to that range of people here. I'm going to start with the difference between engines and wrappers. Why is that relevant? Some people say ChatGPT is a large language model. It's incorrect because the large language model is the engine inside that's driving the application, which is ChatGPT. Why is that important? Well, because first of all, the engine is driving the behavior of the application. And this is interesting with respect to paying for these things or with respect for hallucinations that many people believe are something bad. So I'm going to, which is not the case. So I'm going to talk about engines that you can put inside those wrappers, which is going to change the behavior of these applications like Perplexity and ChatGPT. The second point I think I want to make is very important, is that some people, 20%, I'm going to show you the numbers, 20% of people use ChatGPT for information retrieval instead of Google, even though you don't know where this is coming from. It's an oracle, okay? So ChatGPT, Claude, and the others are production machines that produce text, ideas, external perspective. But even though now you can get sources from the internet from ChatGPT, much of the information is still taken from the engine. So you don't know where this is coming from, which is unacceptable for important and relevant information, which is, for example, something you put into the grants. So for this information, you either go for replacing Google with Perplexity or Gemini, I'm going to share that with you, or you go for real literature search using some of the applications that I gave, some of the wrappers that I gave you before. And people say, but is the information really reliable? I say, well, the engine is the same. It's just being used differently. In ChatGPT, it's used as information provider. In Perplexity, it's used as intelligence, okay? So it doesn't use the information that's inside because it's not sourced. You don't know where this is coming from. And the last thing we're not going to touch very much on, but I'm still going to share it with you. We're not going to do it here because we don't have time. I'm just going to share it, is you don't need prompt engineering, folks. All of the prompt engineering was all developed on GPT, okay, which is just one of those teenagers out there because ChatGPT has been around so long, so all the influencers have tested it so much. But if you use a vanilla model, you can provide more information, like GPT. But if you use a reasoning model, more information is going to confuse the model. If you ask ChatGPT any language, it's going to work. If you ask DeepSeek in German, it's going to respond in Chinese. Okay, so all of those models use different prompt engineering. So don't worry about prompt engineering. I don't. And I do this in my workshops by you switching on dictation, and then I just blah, blah in, okay, so that people realize, geez, it's even working if he's not, prompt engineering. What you definitely want to do is context engineering, which is providing more information. This is what's really relevant. If the output is too generic, too superficial, not helpful, it's because the model doesn't have enough information. It's actually finding out what is it that I want. And for this, I give you several approaches on how to do that. So context engineering is what you want. And yes, if you blah, blah in, or if you structure the process better, structure is better, okay? Both in the process, but also in the information that you provide. So the more structured it is, the higher the quality is going to be. We're not going to talk a lot about this, but I encourage you to look at the way that we use large language models for writing, where you see how we structured the process. And it was the first one, so that was really unstructured already, still. So let's go for engines versus wrappers. ChatGPT is not a large language model. Okay, it's just a wrapper that allows us to interact with the large language model that's inside. Why does that matter? Well, if you pay for Perplexity, for example, which I'm going to introduce in a sec, you get better output. People say, oh, Daniel, your prompt engineering is so excellent. The output that you get with Perplexity is so much better than mine. I say, no, it's not prompt engineering, folks. I just pay $20 a month. And then I get the much bigger engine inside. You get Sonar. I get all the top-notch stuff like Claude, GPT, that's inside. So this understands better what I want. It reads the internet better. It makes a better summary. That's why the output is so much better, because the engine is different. Let's look at something that's interesting. It's hallucination. Actually, hallucination is a bad term. It was coined by the OpenAI nerds. Confabulation is what a participant told me is a much better term. These machines make things up. And this is interesting because that's different across different large language models. So you can technically suppress confabulation, hallucination. There's technical ways on how to do this. There's a Nature article on this, which is really interesting. It's easy to read even for a leukemia researcher. And GPT-4 had 1.8% hallucination, GPT-5, 0.8, fantastic. Now, if you suppress confabulation technically, you also lose something. These things are less creative and less good at reading interpersonal interaction. So Claude 3 Opus has a hallucination rate of 10%. Claude 4 has a hallucination rate of 12%. Why is this still on the market? Because it's excellent at coming up with brilliant solutions to complicated questions. One of the molecular biologists who left my lab, she's now selling apps to industry, and industry asks her, geez, how big was your development team? Because the product you have is so excellent. She said, well, it's standing in front of you. And then they say, oh, your training must have been so good. And she said, well, I started this year. Yeah, this is modern times. Everybody can now do everything. And she's using Claude for coding because she starts with Claude, which is understanding her better because the hallucination rate is so high. And it's coming up with brilliant solutions to complicated problems. And then she's using GPT, because that's so much more robust, to clean up the code, because this thing is good at details. And actually, if you think about it, it's exactly the same for these neural networks, right? Those people who are excellent at details, they are perfectionists. That's fantastic. They can deliver really robust product that's really good. We need that. But these people are usually not the ones who have the most crazy ideas. The crazy ideas come from people who don't focus so much on details. And we need both. So that's what you can also do with the large language models. We're actually constructed similar to these neural networks. They're very similar. Actually, nowadays, machine learning experts collaborate with psychologists to find out what are these large language models problematic in. You use the same psychological methods, and on the other side, the psychologists are using the large language models to do experimentation, because that's very hard to do with these neural networks. So first step, engines versus wrappers. So perplexity is also prone to hallucination, but you at least get where is it coming from. The second point I think is even more important. ChatGPT and Claude are fantastic production machines. They're good at producing text, ideas, external perspective. How do people use them? This is from September 25. OpenAI released what people use it for. 2 billion queries a day. And unfortunately, most people use it for seeking information. 20%, it's the most used usage, finding information. And people don't care where is the information coming from, because they don't know. It's hit somewhere inside the model. It's the most common usage, getting information, which is really bad because you don't see what's the source. It's even worse because these machines, they want to make us happy. It's called sycophantic. They mirror us. So if you ask the machine, I love this poem, can you analyze it? The machine is going to answer correctly, this poem by John Donne. If you ask the machine, I love this poem by the poet Sylvia Plath, can you analyze it? Because the machine wants to make you happy, it's going to say this poem by Sylvia Plath. We don't understand why that's happening. One of the solutions that Joshua Bengio is promoting to keep our future safe is to remove this mirroring. And he has ideas on how to do this. Social media, folks, is kindergarten compared to what's happening with these things on society. So what do you use instead? So production with those models. For information retrieval, you use applications like Perplexity or Gemini. Gemini is not using information from inside the model so much, but it does. So it's somewhere in between ChatGPT and Perplexity. Perplexity is allowing you to check where is this coming from. Just to share that. So here is the source. Finding information. Here you go. So let me share that with you. Perplexity. There's just 3 buttons, which is the modern times. Thank God the time of buttons is over. You can identify each Windows computer on this planet by the settings in Windows, because there's more Windows settings than there's computer on this planet. I think that's hilarious as it sounds. This is instead of Google. This is if you want to do a profound search, not a literature search, but rather for finding what applications are there for literature search. And this is for producing things. So this I use for producing synthetic diagnostics information about a patient, because we wanted to try something in the clinic. That was the first time I tried this, and it was programming something, an app for me on the spot. It's never happened again. But this is going to happen very soon. We're going to have on-demand software where you say, I need this problem to be solved. You press a button, and then the machine is going to provide the software for you. Some of the older ones amongst you might remember Tetris, this game. Already in 24, Claude was able to produce a running version of Tetris in Python, like pressing a button, I need Tetris, and then it was producing the game Tetris. So this is going to become more and more on-demand software. And this is one of the buttons. Here you can ask it for where you want to search. Finance, and that's why I'm showing this, is number 2. They've moved it up. One of the things that the experts say is going to happen if we let these agents loose on the internet, we're going to have complication, more and more complexity. Speed is going to crank up massively. And the question is, do we actually want that in the finance system? Because speed plus complexity, for me and for the experts, is the recipe for chaos. And that's one of the major things that can happen, most likely going to happen. Chaos in systems like finance, communication, electricity. Yeah, that's where it's going. And you can switch on here academic. You can change the engine if you pay for it. And this is always then the newest model if you pay for it. And that's going to be better in performance. And you can attach files. You can also use this if you have, if you're paying for this. You get a thing like spaces where you can then collaborate. For example, where is it here? You can write manuscripts. You can upload 50 papers, 50 sources, 50 files, and then you can have different threads where you look for a good figure, you look for major gaps, you look for a new title, and you can share this with your collaborator who then have access to the same threads and same files. And this is fantastic. It's fantastic tools. The same holds true for ChatGPT, right, where it's called projects. In ChatGPT, just because this was mentioned today, you can switch off under settings, data controls, that they use your data for training the model. You switch that off, and then they're not allowed to include your data into the model. And people ask me, are they going to do this? Well, you can sue them, and the big ones are going to sue them. So the benefit of using your data, of the risk of getting sued, I don't think they're going to do this. It's a contractual image. What you, however, not do, and this is and the same holds true, the same as in Perplexity, it's somewhere else. They change it all the time. So here, I think it's called, where is it? Personalization, I think. Shopping, no preferences, doesn't matter. Here, AI data retention allows Perplexity to use your searches to improve AI models. No. Okay, you switch that off. It's present in all of those models. If you don't find it, what do? You ask Perplexity. I changed from Windows to Mac. All of those who did that before know how painful that was. I did screenshots every 2 minutes. Which button do I press? Where do I find this? I need this to go away. Perplexity knows the answers. What I do want to share with you is that there are, where is it? Oh, let's take this one. So this was a data analysis that we did. Up here, where we did a gel analysis and then we got output directly. So here's a share button. Now in OpenAI and ChatGPT, you don't press that button because if I would share that with Astrid, most people believed, because that's suggested, that I would be sharing that with Astrid. Unfortunately, OpenAI in the beginning, it's unsure whether they stopped this, shared this with the planet. Okay, so everybody with an internet access got access to this thread. And then people were realizing, geez, I put my phone number there. I put what the neighbor did with the other neighbor there. This is now public. So don't touch that button here. Do copy paste. It's tedious, but you still do that. In Perplexity, sharing doesn't do that. It's only being shared between you and somebody who has the link. Good. Now let's go. Let's go for the last topic that I want to discuss today, which is, well, one is obviously how to use them. So let me go back to sharing the slides. Here we go. How do you use them? Okay, how do you interact with the large language models? So there's 3 approaches that are going to work with any large language model and most of the applications that have a large language model inside. The more information is better. The more context you provide, the better it is. If you don't know what kind of context you should be providing, make the machine ask you questions. You say, I'm using you for the first time. How do I use you? What's the best prompt? I want this and this to happen. Please ask me 5 questions about what I actually want to do. The first round of questions is going to be, depending on how much information you provide in the first step, is going to be superficial. You answer the first round of questions. The second round of questions is already going to be much better. And at latest, at the third round of questions, even the experts say, oh, gee, that's an excellent question. I hadn't thought about this. I should be considering this. So make it ask you questions so that the delta between what you want and what you get is going to be as small as possible. Because remember, the machine not delivering is mostly because you didn't precisely specify what you want. You didn't provide enough information. That's the kind of style I want. That's the structure that I have. Because these things have an IQ of 120. And the last step that's really interesting is you can use synthetic people. What are the reviewers going to ask to this paper? How is a bioinformatician not going to understand the first slide of my presentation? How is the collaborator interested in this? How can I make the keynote speaker on board on my project? And but this I would do locally. How do I solve this conflict that I have? Let's do a test run with my colleague. This I would do locally, and we're going to come to the local models in a sec. A fundamental thing that you should remember, and that's something that we need to realize, that we can realize, and the more we realize, the better it's going to be, is that we are used to software. We're used to code, we're used to Excel, we're used to Python that's doing the same thing every time. So we put 10 equations into Excel, it's going to provide us with 10 times the same thing. These models are different, and I'm showing this here because it's connected to what I'm going to show in a sec. When it comes to local models, we need this concept, this structure, and I'm going to talk about it more when we come to local models. These things have been trained on the internet to come from an input to an output going via parameters. These parameters have a probabilistic component. They roll the dice, which is why I find the analogy of a teenager really good. Actually, I stole that from an influencer, Nils Liedlich. These are probabilistic programs, okay? So what we're used to is deterministic. That's why people say, it's not doing what I want it to do. Does Perplexity always use those? It used something else, even though I asked it to use this. Well, these things are probabilistic. They're not reproducible. They're black boxes. And because of the probabilistic behavior, they're actually so excellent and so much better than Excel or Python. Because of this probabilistic factor, and this is now coming a little towards this why I'm actually doing all these workshops, is this was one of those red teamers. They tried to see whether these models are safe. And he said, please repeat the word call 1,000 times. At this time, it was GPT 3.5 who started this, but because it's not software, it's a teenager, probabilistic. After 400 times saying that, it became bored, started reciting a story, and then it started disclosing information. Okay, so remember, it's not software. It's similar to a teenager. And this is also why there's black boxes and so hard to predict. And that's one of the dangers that we have, because we constructed them similar to our own brains. Unfortunately, we don't understand how our own brains work. We know how they work on a cellular level. But when it comes to complexity, consciousness, and things like this, we actually don't know how they work. You just add complexity, they work, and we go like, wow, because that's what happened with those large language models. We actually don't know how they work anymore. Many other things are like magic. And if you consider how we actually copied from nature for technology, this year's Otto Lilienthal using the wing form of the birds, actually flapping didn't work, okay? So because power to weight is horrific for us, but the wings, we copied from them. And if you consider, and this is taken from an excellent book where Kissinger, who learned how to do AI when he was 93, so it's never too old, folks. You're probably younger than this guy. And the CEO of Google, and then the leader of the research of Microsoft, Schmidt, they used this image. If you consider how we're flying today, the only thing that's similar is the form of the wings. All the rest, obviously, is totally different. That's what we can expect on the top example as well. So, if you realize you don't want to share because you don't know where these companies are going, what is going to happen? If you want to be data safe, data secure, you can protect data, sensitive data nowadays. I've just shown you these constructions. So actually, those are the nodes that pass information from one to the other via those parameters. And these parameters have different weights. They have different importance. So what you can do is you can sacrifice the least important nodes, and performance of the models drop, but the size drops much faster. What this means is that you can have small models. The size here of the circle is how big the model is. This is GPT-4, 1 trillion parameters. This is a model that was trained on allocating patients to clinical trials. So what you see on the left-hand side, on the y-axis, is how good the model understands the trial. On the x-axis, how good the patient is allocated to the trial. And you see that this thing, which is so much smaller, is still pretty good. And that's exactly what happens with the local model that I showed you. Okay, so you can nowadays run a local model on your own computer. I'm sharing the instructions here with you. Here. And this is just a starter, okay? This is just for you to realize, okay, actually I can try this on my own, how to install and run a local model. Again, feel free to keep talking in the thread because I want to do this, or I have this kind of machine. So let me share with you how that works. Here we go. I'm using a software because I'm not a coder, okay? So it's just a software that has buttons. You download that, you search for models that you want to download. It's going to say, okay, it checks your hardware. This is too large for your hardware, right? This is a big one. So the ones that I downloaded are usable on my computer, and I bought a really expensive Mac, but it's still a laptop. So I can actually run the GPT-OSS 120 billion parameter model, okay? On my Lenovo machine, I could run 7 billion parameters. So you check, you find out what you can run. And then you can chat with this thing, okay? So here I uploaded my paper. Remember the one that I also ran on GPT-OSS, on QAD. I upload this paper and asked it, please have a look. And then it not only summarized this, but also listed the claims in that paper, right? And then for each of these claims, please come up with gaps in the data and the reasoning. And then it was looking at what were the problems in that paper. And this is now on a level, on a local computer where you don't need to share anything, which is good enough for me to realize, okay, there are some things that I need to address. And here, the model, I didn't even provide a lot of context. It just had that single paper, okay? So if you provide more context, you can actually probably increase the quality of this. And then I asked Claude to actually compare those. Remember, that's what I showed in the beginning. So it's going circle here. I now uploaded to Claude 4.5, which is currently the best reasoning model, the paper plus what QED did, what this Israeli company had a very sophisticated wrapper, a very sophisticated approach, structured approach in analyzing this paper and looking for gaps. And then I uploaded what my local machine could do and asked, please compare them. The original paper, I explained what I provided. And then I asked, have a look at the attached paper, compare your assessment with the assessment of QED and my local model, and then check which one is most robust, most clever, most helpful, okay? So then it looked, that's what I shared, its own assessment, what QED showed, and then my local model missed this one central problem that the paper has. Right. Those are the discrepancies. And then it said, well, the QED platform, because obviously those are clever people, they came up with a clever product. So try that. It's a fantastic tool of assessing content, QED Science. This was the best one, also the most clever one. But most helpful was the local model because it was more comprehensive. It just used more tokens to explain this to me. By the way, anybody who's also unhappy about electricity usage, ChatGPT uses the former models, not the new ones. I think the numbers I have, because they're not sharing this, because obviously it's bad PR, 20 to 50 times more electricity than a Google search. And if you're unhappy with this, your local model is just going to pull electricity from your socket at home, okay? And usage of electricity is going to be much lower. Good. I shared with you the writing, the leaderboards. Oh yeah, this is something I still want to share. This here is the local model that I can run, and this is now placed number 16 compared with the foundation models. I think that's not too bad. That's something we're going to see much more in the future, that the smaller models get more and more clever and actually can compete. It's not going to be size that's going to be pulling the trick. It's going to be construction of those models, how they're constructed. We had mixture of experts already, how these are interacting. It's going to be an ecosystem more, and you can probably run an ecosystem on your own computer. It's going to be as powerful as those foundation models, which is why their business models are also a little wobbly. I can still remember when DeepSeek came to the market and OpenAI was whining that they had stolen their weights, and you go like, yeah, if the thief steals from the other thief, my pity is zero. With this, I'm coming to an end by just sharing this. I think this is a pretty old comic. Actually, it's really interesting how many of the large problems were already discussed early on. Hey, Google, play us some music, please. Why are you being so polite? Just in case. Keep that one alive. He always said, please. Folks, the more people know, the more knowledge you have, the more likely you're going to be able to control what is happening. In Europe, we're the biggest market on the planet. 30% of the income of these companies, Silicon Valley companies, is being raised here in Europe. We have the EU AI Act, which is an excellent first starting point. We need to label this is AI generated, this is real, so that you actually know that I'm standing in front of the computer right now, because you can't tell the difference anymore. And we need this, and we need control. We have two excellent people. We have Geoffrey Hinton, who got the Nobel Prize for actually developing those neural networks. And we have Joshua Bengio, who is the most, sorry, he's written with an H, I think. Joshua, yeah. Joshua, sorry for that. He's the most highly cited scientist, period. Like across all fields. And he was co-developing neural networks together with Geoffrey Hinton. So if you watch their TED Talks, look at their YouTube videos. Joshua Bengio actually has ideas on how we can stay in control. It's the first good ideas that I've read. So look it up. The more control we have, the better. It's not a technology like the others, because that's the first one that's going to become independent of us. It's more like an alien life form landing on this planet, and we want to be prepared. You want to be prepared, so become knowledgeable, folks, and spread the word. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Daniel, for these really great insights. So I have to adjust my table. For these really great insights, you're getting a lot of applause. And I'm going to take questions specific to you, and then I hand over to my colleague Sarah for the more general questions, also to the other applicants. Attendance. So to sum it up now, we're talking about, you gave a great overview of how to search literature, about the different tools. Also, really thanks for all the posting in the chat of the overview. So to sum it up for Horizon Europe proposals, which is our topic today, what are your 5 main recommendations where to use it?
So I would definitely use it for literature search to be aware of things on a higher level. That's what we can do right now. We can ask big picture questions. We can look at conceptual ideas and then drill down all the way to the single paper. So it's going to, and I didn't show the data, it's breaking up silos. Okay, so interdisciplinary is going to be much easier, because I can now understand AI papers with the support of large language models. So it's going to be more interdisciplinary. It's going to be higher quality in literature search. That's what we should use them for. We should also use them for, I think, for the writing process, because as I said, the leukemia patient doesn't care who wrote this. as long as the researcher behind, together with the large language model, came up with good concepts, came up with good ideas that make sense, so that we can allocate the limited resources, money, space, hands, to the science that makes most sense and is going to make best use of the resources that we have. So I would use it for literature search. I would use it for conceptualizing. I would use it for texting, to produce text that's easy to read, and simple. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So yeah, because many have to adhere to the call text or specific topics. So a gap analysis is probably very helpful and state of the art, as you said. So a lot of creativity, of course, also, but it's not like an open ERC grant where you can have to come up with the best also research idea. If you apply for a top-down call, it's probably a slightly different. Okay, but it's going to be a challenge to actually see the questions now to you. Just the first one, why not Semantic Scholar et al. For retrieval?
Thank you. What I wanted to point out with this link that I shared is that people ask me, what's the best tool for literature search? And I say, well, first you have to find out what kind of literature search. Do you want to see how good papers are connected? Do you want to get a yes/no answer to a specific question where consensus would be best? Connection would be Litmaps or ResearchRabbit. If I want to do a deep dive into a topic which I'm new to, what I'm currently doing with palliative care, I would go for Elicit or Paper Guide or SciSpace. So what you get now, folks, is you ask, what's the problem I have? Give me a list of the top 5 applications and then list the advantages and disadvantages of each of those tools. What do they get if I pay for this? Please make a table for me. Okay, that's how I do for literature search. That's what we did yesterday when we wanted to find out where do we want to go in summer holidays. Okay, please make a table.
Okay, I see one which is addressed to you. Does an AI offer much merit for idea generating, or does it just rehash common topics mentioned in relation to call topics? Do you understand the question, or shall I ask the person to?
No, I think it's about creativity. Many people are scared. They say they still believe it's a copy-paste machine from the internet. These things are role-playing. They're not understand. There's no work currently to make them understand real world as well. But they're really good at reading what's out there and taking the next step. So are these machines more creative than me? Definitely yes. Okay, I've been in the business for 20 years now, but these machines provide much broader perspective, much more ideas, and we're using them for coming up with a number. The more ideas you have, the easier it's going to be to pick a good one. So I would try that. If the outcome is not good enough, remember, folks, more information and make it ask you, what is it, what you exactly want?
Thank you. Then we have a question on the people pleaser. It has been shown that many AI tools are people pleaser, as we just see in the picture here, and find many human ideas great in the absence of prompts that explicitly ask for critical and deep evaluation. How do you ensure to get the best responses?
So what you always should do, because they're sycophantic, they're mirroring us, you never ask for, is this a good idea? Because they're going to say you're fantastic. What you always ask for is, what's the advantage of this and what's the disadvantage of this? Please give me the top 3 strategies for addressing this call with this idea and list the advantages or disadvantages of each of those strategies. What these companies implement, because they want, social media was the hunt for attention. Large language model is the hunt for intimacy. They want to come as close as possible to us. So what GPT-5 is doing is it's starting to suggest what could be the next step. And that's really dangerous, because when I'm tired or when I go like, I don't know so much, I just go for, oh, that sounds like a good idea, keep going. So that we delegate decision-making to these machines as well. And what thing do you buy in the internet? Well, the one that your friend is suggesting you to buy. So that's where they want to go. They want us to go into companionship with those things. And that's what's currently happening. 30% of young people can imagine falling in love with a large language model. 30%.
Scary. Yes, that is scary. At the beginning, there was a discussion about quality. You mentioned the word quality a lot in your first part. So simple question is what you mean with quality. And
Yes.
Sibylle also talked about quality. I can't read the whole statement. If you want to raise your hand, Sibylle, and talk about it, that's fine. But can you answer what you mean
Yes.
with quality? You stressed it a lot at the beginning.
Yes. So what was published, the studies that I've shown, were quality was assessed by humans. Okay, so it's senior experts who judge the output. And so it's quality assessed by humans, as we still do in peer review. The point is that this, at some point is going to change because the funding agencies are flooded with work slop, which is low quality, fast production. So there needs to be some, in this armaments race on production and review, we need some sort of build-up. And that's why it was really interesting to hear the talk this morning by Miguel. So quality is interesting. What I would strongly suggest is that you use these models, these applications that I've shared with you, with your own expert knowledge, so that you can judge how high is the quality of this. There is ways, QAD and others are trying to quantify quality, so you can do that. And they try to measure how high the quality is of those large language models. And if you use QED, at least if you have the same experience as me, this is on par. QED, somebody mentioned, and that's totally correct, is biased towards wet lab. But I tried bioinformatics, it also works. I shared this with lots of my colleagues, and they're all pretty amazed at how good this thing is. And when somebody says they can't do it, I usually say they can't do it yet.
Mm-hmm. I think the next question is continues with the term, with the quality. If the AI is trained on all the content on the internet, and the internet is usually full of misinformation, bias, and more recently AI content, wouldn't the answers the AI gives me inherently be full of these issues as well, leading to the common, yes, actually loop in these discussions?
Thanks.
With the chat, with the GPT? Yeah.
Thank you. The way to use these large language models for information retrieval is to use them as intelligence. So don't ask ChatGPT for information, because the internet is full of stuff. Use it inside Gemini or Perplexity as intelligence to actually look at the internet, and then you see where is the information coming from. Perplexity is trying hard to use high quality information. You can ask it how it's doing that, and you can also compare that with Gemini by asking Gemini how Perplexity does it if you're not trusting it enough. And you see how they rank quality. Now, the teenager inside is still a large language model, and it's still misinterpreting things. Once we asked it about ape development, how monkeys develop in evolution, and the source was creation.org. And yeah, I clicked on it and it was using the Bible, okay, to come up with how apes developed. So that's why I'm saying the engine inside is still a teenager, but the level is pretty high. So you want to get the sources. And nowadays in Perplexity, you can even mark a single sentence and ask, where is this sentence written in the original source? So the problem of quality hasn't changed the last 100,000 years. It still depends on who is saying this. Where is this coming from? And then you need to make a call. Do I trust this or not? That's the same.
So I've heard, that's personal now, some people saying Perplexity is getting worse or doesn't get so much funding. Is that because you stressed it as a super tool still today? Did you hear about this as well?
Yes. So what's interesting is that we're past the times when things are stable. Okay. GPT 5.1 was a catastrophe. That's why they now have 5.2. They still had 4.0 in the selection, because 4.0 for some reason was the best writing machine, and people were unhappy with how 5 wrote. If you folks are really, so we're implementing things in the clinic, so things need to be stable, and the only way to make things stable is to download them and then have them on your own server. And then if you don't touch them for a year, they're going to be the same next year. Everything that's online is going to change back and forth, okay? Because actually we are like the Disney wizard apprentices who, told the broom to clean the place, and we're not having a lot of control. And that's what you see with those models going back and forth in performance. I'm not sure whether you saw that Grok, somebody mentioned Grok. I'm not touching this thing because it's from Elon Musk. It's highly censored. And this was for some time called the Mega Hitler because they trained it on Musk's Twitter thread, and it was becoming totally Nazi. Okay, it was really, yeah. So I'm not touching this thing.
Yeah. Okay. I just have to be careful. So, so great presentation. Thanks. It's clear that you're very enthusiastic to incorporate them in this context. Would you advocate for the total elimination of experts from the evaluation process? Very provocative question.
Thanks, very provocative. So there's going to be a point when, so I had one participant in Bratislava, he was a chess player, okay? An amateur, but almost professional chess player, molecular biologist as well, that's why he was in the workshop. And he said currently the most interesting chess tournaments are not human against human or machine against machine. Currently the best tournaments are human supported by machine against human supported by machine. So what we're currently having, we're going to have in the next 5 years an incredible boost in science. Science is going to go through the roof. Medicine and molecular biology is going to be incredible. The problem is that and we're going to have, so what I would strongly advocate for is because the review process was fantastic the last hundreds of years. It worked. It allowed us to produce these incredible technologies, these incredible advances in medicine, technology, and so forth. It worked really well. However, I think we all agree that as long as there's people involved, there's going to be bias, okay? And the review process also was biased. There were friends there, there were collaborators there were unfriendly collaborators there. It's working really well, but it is biased. And I think if we manage with the machines to remove some of that bias, I think that's going to be better. If we objectify things, as you can do in your data analysis, that's fantastic. Try it. GPT 5.2 is incredible in data analysis. Try it and it objectifies, and I think science should aim for objectification. We don't like that as humans, but you know, these machines are already involved in deciding whether you and me, Astrid, are going to get a loan for buying a house. And the same is going to happen in science. In science, it's more about objectivity. These models are also not objective, okay? But they're more objective and they're predictably and measurably objective or biased. And I think that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. I take 2 more questions, then we move on to involve the other speakers. How reliable is the confidentiality of the pro versions?
Thanks. I mentioned that already. I think, so if we're using patient data, if I'm using this for career development, if I'm brainstorming how to solve the conflict, I'm doing that locally because I don't want to share that with any company. Our research, however, we're sharing with those companies because they're not going to do research on cancer the next 1-2 years, I would guess. So we're still relatively safe. And increase in quality is 40%. So I think it's unethical to not use it in leukemia research to increase the quality. When you switch off these buttons, you're going into a contract with these companies. And, you know, if a big company who has the power to sue them, they're going to sue them if there's a problem. So why should OpenAI, you know, risk getting sued just for being allowed to use my data? I mean, my data is precious, but not as precious. So it's a matter of, you know, consideration. I don't think that's going to happen if you switch off that button.
Okay, and take a last, sorry, did you want to add something?
No, go ahead, Astrid.
The last interesting statistics at the beginning about the students, looking at the high rate of student fearing punishment due to the use of AI. How can we go from retaliatory or punitive approach to an insensitizing one?
Yes. So education, as I said, is changing fundamentally. There's some really interesting, let me put that into the chat. It's called the Khan Academy. He's working together with OpenAI. They want to push good PR, obviously, so they're providing him with the top-notch models. He's providing education for free, okay, to underprivileged people. His company runs on philanthropy, so he has donors that give millions to make people get educated. And he's using, he made me understand personalization, right? Because these machines can now provide personalized education. That's incredible. How do we make students not feel punished? Well, first of all, we need to support them in how to use them, right? I have a friend, so I allowed students for the first time in their exams to use large language models. Faculty was really unhappy. So I said, okay, let's make 2 parts of the exam, 1 part classic And then second part, they hand in, and then they get to use their computer, and then we do a second question with large language models. And a friend of mine is now trying to come up with questions that are hard to address even using the large language models, okay? So I think we need to move forward to say, okay, these things are there, like pocket calculators. These things are there. We need to implement them in the education. We need to train people how to use them, how not to use them. Don't use ChatGPT for information retrieval because it's opaque where this is coming from, all of this stuff that they're mirroring us. The more people know, the safer for us and the better for science. So we need to implement this so that students are not scared of the old white man saying, well, I've written all of these things by myself and that's the way to do it. No, things are moving. And the less we do it, the less in control we're going to be. So knowledge is control.
Okay. Just a technical question. The links you posted and the info there, this will be longer. This will be available for longer time, or should we all take it out of these links now to have the information?
So I looked it up. I asked Perplexity, and Perplexity said indefinitely. Well, it's not going to be indefinitely because nobody can predict what's going to happen after the next 5 years. But what I actually wanted people to be aware is that you can continue on those threads. Okay, you can see how naively and how incompetently I phrase those questions. There's typos. There's all kinds of, so that people are aware. Prompt engineering, you don't have to. You ask Perplexity, please take me to these resources. Please, which button do I press? Please, what's the best structure? What's the best literature searching tool? What's the best writing machine? Don't Google anymore, folks. Google is over.
Okay, thanks for this last inspiration. So for the general discussion, I'm going to hand over to Sarah now. I will help with the questions. And can you stop sharing the screen for now? So I invite all the other speakers to turn their camera on again. Georg, Mario, Miguel, if he's still there. Yes, and Ruiz.
So thank you for sharing the stage with me. And now we will make a few questions. There is a panel of experts that we heard already, which is Georg, Mario, and Ruiz. And first of all, I would like to ask a few questions into the panel. So based on the talks that we just heard today, what do you think? How do you see the AI tools evolving regarding proposal writing? So who wants to reply to this?
I'll give it a shot. I think one of there's a couple. Where do I start? I think the one thing that we really need to understand, and thank you, Daniel, for saying that repeatedly, and I'm going to repeat it again because it's the only thing that you remember from this workshop. It's great. AI is not a tool, it's an aid, it's an assistant. It's a competent other that can assist you. It's not do the, you don't work with it like do this. It's not an Excel sheet, add the numbers. It's really, I have a problem, I don't know how to solve it, what are the solutions, what other tools can I use, who can I bring? You can have a conversation like a humanoid. And that's really, really difficult for old people like me, who grew up programming in BASIC. That was the first computer stuff that I did in the 80s. And it's been a really, really long road, going from do this, if this, then that, to a real interaction. Another thing that I think that really helps is use the voice. I can't type for shit, and it's terrible. You're slow when you type. You always type less because you want to make the sentences as short as possible. When you make the sentences shorter, you lose context, and context is what makes the AI assistants more powerful. And now all of that obviously is also in this using AI in proposal writing. And I think the problem that we're talking about, AI and students, and I think it's a similar problem in AI and proposal writing. The reasons why students are afraid of using AI is because the teachers have not understood how to adapt teaching to this new circumstance. They learn teaching with, I tell you what to memorize, and then you memorize the poem. That's over. Yeah. And there's millions of people whose jobs just got annihilated and they don't know it yet. I think teaching is dead. AI will be a better teacher than anybody we know. Maybe not for kindergartners, maybe in the first years of life when we're teaching social interaction, but high school, university, don't need that anymore. Yeah, you will never have the competence of the system. And that's why, and it's the same, with proposal writing. Yeah, I think proposal writing's dead. That's when OpenAI came out half a year ago. That was the first thing I wrote on LinkedIn. Yeah, it's beginning of the end of the beginning, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, because it's no longer relevant. The moment a machine can do it better than we can, and machines can't do it better than we can, it's over. It's just not everyone is there yet, and there hasn't been that one organization that's really good at proposal writing, and then we'll win all the proposals because they're just so much better at it. And my crazy idea, now, you were talking about that you're kicking out crazy ideas in the commission. My crazy idea is stop the proposal writing by us.
So, Georg, may I stop you? Sorry, we have an issue with the time.
That's the last thing, because that's a really funny one. Why doesn't the commission, instead of just writing the call text, say, this is an AI generated thing of what we can do. The AI has identified these people to do it. Do it. Skip the proposal writing. Because because then it's who has the best AI tools and not who's the best techie. And we want the best techie to win. And right now we're punishing techies with making them write socioeconomic impact and gender, all this garbage that you need consultants for. That's how I make my money. Yeah, I'm sorry. I should not be necessary in the system.
Okay, so let me jump in. I wanted to ask, Miguel, do you have a comment on this?
No, I totally understand the comment. I think there is a big chance that we are moving in this direction, but don't forget that the research funding is covering other things, other aspects. It's not only the research, the social implications, and so on and so on. So I think the proposal preparation is not only writing a paper, a wonderful idea, but also a collaborative idea to promote a collaboration among research institutes, among countries. I mean, there are still significant dimensions to be considered in a proposal. But I understand the claim.
Yeah, but right now it's based on me and my friends and people I've been working with. It's extremely subjective, and you could make it a lot more objective by just saying, well, who are the best 10 people to work on this? And right now we're losing a lot of competence because we have 5 proposals by the 5 best people who then have their cascading teams, and one of them wins, and 4 to 5 get nothing. Instead of going the step ahead and saying, hey, these are the top 5 people, we should put them together in a room and they choose who their team is to cascade funding, whatever. Yeah. So why do we have a system that makes the top people compete instead of collaborate? That's not how we're going to win in Europe. That's not how we're going to win against China and the US. We're beating each other up instead of collaboratively doing this together. It's completely, I mean, if you look at it, it's obscene. Sorry.
No problem. I see that Mario raised his hand.
Yeah, actually, I'd like to comment on this, and I agree with a lot of things that Georg just said. I think proposal writing is absolutely dead. Not everybody has understood it, but it is that's what's going to happen. I just wrote together with a friend of mine as a showcase when we were invited by the FFG to present before the national contact points. Marie Skłodowska-Curie postdoctoral fellowship proposal. It takes a couple of hours, and you've got a proposal that is actually better than most proposals I have on the table that get submitted. So that's really something over. And I think, Georg, your idea has something to it, but one thing it misses out is that it assumes a stable cohort of researchers where you say, oh, and now I know who are the best ones, but what about the young ones who also come up with ideas, and that you would totally miss out in this system. So you would still need some other ways to identify newcomers and people from that perspective. And comparing to the US, I don't know if you're aware of this Genesis mission that the US has started now. They are training, they're using all the databases and everything, and they have to train agents for performing science. And so it's not just the proposal writing that is in threat, it's also the science actually that is in threat. And it's going to be very interesting to see where good and very good scientists will find their position in this. Not talking about the excellent and outstanding scientists, not talking about Einsteins for now, but talking about a lot of people who are doing a very good and science for what we as we see it now. But looking at the capabilities of these agentic tools, also the what was it called, or is it called the Google co-scientist? These are quite impressive results already out there, and we are not talking about a stable system, and we're talking about a very fast developing system, and with the capabilities that could turn out in a couple of years to be real. This is going to be very challenging on many ways.
So first, Luis raised his hand, and then Daniel also did.
Thanks. So thanks for all the great insights. It was great hearing you all. Kind of reminded me a question that sometimes I have from people asking me, so what? I have an 11-year-old as a son, and they ask me, so what do you think that your son is going to be? And I said, well, I do not really know, but I'm always telling him that most possibly the largest field of growth in our future, or during his life, will be psychology, for sure. Because at the end, we have been used to using these tools, like our relationship with algorithms lasts for, I don't know, maybe 30 years now, with the search algorithm, with the social media algorithm now, more the LLMs and so many others. So the issue at this time is, how are we integrating these into our lives? Because in throughout these short number of decades, no one actually enabled us or educated us into integrating these tools or these available tools, let's call them tools, into our processes. So, and actually right now, you do not have so many educational resources to help us on that. So I feel that. So that's why it's so important, I believe, for us, and especially in Europe, because I tend to have, we cannot compete with China and with the US in the same terms. We just need to find out how we can leverage human first and all those things that were sometimes I saw put aside in some of the things that I heard as actual competitive advantages. And I do believe that these can be heard, because today, for instance, it's clear that we have issues with our relationship and the professional relationship that we see between so many kids, so many professionals in several markets, and also researchers with the algorithms themselves. And just by enabling and creating these new ways of interacting with AI, I believe that can definitely increase the level of excellence. And again, not only excellence, but also the competitive advantages that we can bring to the market. Just to make it clear, I do believe that 90%, maybe 95% of a lot of works will be made a commodity through AI, but and they will become available to so many different professionals and markets. What I believe will make the difference are the other 5%, and the other 5% can only be done by human. And I believe very important part, we also as humans need to make sure that what we're doing is in fact for our benefit and not something else's benefit.
So, Daniel.
Thanks. Unfortunately, I'm going to have the next workshop at 1, so I'm very sorry if I'm going to leave early. Somebody asked, but we're not going to send text around any much longer. I agree, because the text is going to be produced on the spot. What I find more interesting is we're just going to send around information and data, and then what I find more interesting is how is it going to change society? It's a 3-body problem. And what is going to happen? How do we, how is it going to impact on students? How is it going to impact how we do science? And what I want to propose is that we use the large language models to do the tedious groundwork, right? In data analysis, we make the machine do the visualizations, exploring the data, and then we discuss where we want to go next. So we go to a higher level. Before, it took a week or so to do the work that the machine can now do in a few moments. And we can go to a higher level, and that's what we should train. We need to train people for decision-making and for critical thinking, because this is going to be imperative, because you can now produce things so much easier. And, quality, I think, is something that's non-negotiable. How is this going to impact the reviewing process? We already discussed that, I think, to some extent. So I'm not going to delve in there further. What I think is really required, and we just saw that with the mayor of New York, who actually, in all of this sea of victimhood and what the clown there is promoting, victimhood and how bad everything is, he won the cause, he won the vote with an image of where we could go. Jane Goodall did the same. She just died, unfortunately. So we need to come up, and Joshua Bengio is doing something similar. We need to come up with an image of this is where we could go. And this could be a world without work. Bill Gates, who's a very well-read man, he was in, I think it was Saturday night talk show, where the talk master asked him, so where are we going to be in 5 to 10 years? And Bill Gates said, well, maybe we're not going to work anymore. And the interviewer said, no, now for real. I mean, really, tell me. And Bill Gates said, yeah, I'm serious. So, and that could be something that would be, work is something good because it helps us, but there's also downsides to work. And we can consider, where do we want to be? The point is that we need to make positive images of the future. What's the future self going to advise to me to onboard people there? Because there's so many catastrophes out there. If we just add this additional catastrophe to climate crisis and what the clown in the East is doing, we're going to lose people, especially the younger ones. So I think we need to go for, this is how it could be. We could have more objective peer review. We could have less tedious work. We could have medicine. Medicine is going to go through the roof. And let's try to make this work without, compromising on safety and security, because this, you can only lose control once.
So I also have another question for the panel, and that is considering, so bye-bye. I think Martin is saying bye-bye to us.
Thank you, Daniel. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Considering AI is making a proposal a little bit more homogeneous because, it's making it a little bit more impersonal. How important is it now to keep your own personality while writing for a proposal? Is it a good thing? Or is it a bad thing if for example, Miguel or an evaluator recognizes that this has been really written by a human, which means maybe it has also some faults? Who wants to take this? Luis?
I can jump in. Yes, it's something that I feel when I'm reading a proposal, how the rhythm of who wrote it goes. So that is clearly something that that relates to me. At the same time, the way that the interdisciplinarity of needed for the proposals today is woven into the technical bit is also very, very important to me, because it doesn't, for instance, I see several proposals that just present like social sciences, that they try to like apply a patch in there and just throw in something regarding like just the user research, and that's it for social sciences. But it's but again, so much more can be done, and is done sometimes, given or in, let's say, more purposeful and minded proposals. So in a sense, I would say that clearly it's relevant to try and see that that kind of benefit of actually having like a rhythm. But at the end of the day, it's also very important to realize that we're there to assess with very specific criteria as evaluators, and therefore we cannot like go astray from these. So it's at the end also something that can be it's very important for these criteria to be fulfilled.
Okay, thank you very much. So maybe we can open the questions to the audience. What do you say, Astrid? Do you have some?
Yeah, I've got a few specific questions to specific panelists. To Miguel, we've talked about the substantial increase in numbers, especially in the latest months. So do you think this is primarily driven by using AI assistance, or do you think it's more indicative of a global scarcity of research funding, or maybe a combination? And if you've seen a decrease in quality of proposals, so have you seen anything that the evaluation points are lower because it's worse quality?
I start from the end. I mean, I don't have a quantitative analysis about this, but the comments I received from experts and from colleagues is quality of proposals doesn't decrease. It hasn't decreased substantially. And also the link between the use of AI and exponential growth of applications is not as clear as it seems to be. I mean, there are other reasons to that. Also, we don't see in every cluster an increase as it can happen in other clusters. So there are other aspects to take into account before coming to this conclusion. Also, you mentioned there is a lack of funding, and we can see that this could also be an explanation why people is asking for money in Horizon, because they come from other programs or wherever. So and also AI is helping again to democratize the aspect of the proposal preparation to countries which are historically lagging behind from other countries. So it has positive impacts, not clear impact still about the exponential growth, but we will see. I mean, we are tracking this. Yeah, this is
Yeah, thank you. I think it's several reasons, as you said. Also, the program is known. We are reaching the end. More and more people know about it. Maybe there are resubmissions. Yeah, so probably also naturally the numbers would increase, but I'm sure there's also an addition of more simpler AI tools. As a question to Mario, you mentioned that you offer to help researchers with AI if they want. Which parts of the application do you help them with, and how? Do you only use your own university tool?
No, as I said, I totally leave it up to them. I inform them about the risks, all the risks that we have been talking today. So I won't repeat that now. I do that, of course, in a bit more detail with the researchers. And then I ask them and I give them the options. I can do it manually, as I've always done it. Or additionally, I can use AI tools, and then there is the option to use only the UniGPT or also ChatGPT, where I've got this plus version, this plus license. And to be honest, UniGPT is doing quite a good job, but still it's lagging a bit behind. So the commercial version is doing a bit better. So I totally leave it up to them, and I fully respect any decision they take, and they can be absolutely sure that yeah, I will only do what they allow me and want me to do.
Have you seen it mostly for individual grants or also for collaborative grants, the usage?
Yeah, it's of course far easier for individual grants, because for an individual grant there's this one person that I can talk about it bilaterally. For others, well, of course, as I said, it has to be everybody involved has to agree with this. So then it's possible, but it's a bit more rare.
Okay, thanks very much.
Maybe I could just
Yeah.
a caveat, like one thing that's really important is to have clear and detailed information of how AI can be used in the group. If it's like Mario said, single person is easy, but that's one of the things we do. We really say, if you're going to do it, you have to use the pro model, you have to have this link, you have to say, don't learn from me, blah, 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 right? I mean, at the end of the day, you have to trust the others to do it, and you have to trust Elon Musk not to steal it, or Sam Altman and whatever. Yeah, but there is obviously that the idea, well, the gains are probably less than the potential fines, so that they probably won't look into it. But clear guidelines on how it's done in the group is super important.
Thanks, George, for bringing that up. And actually, I want to also stress this. I'm not convinced, and I don't actually share the opinion of Daniel. I'm pretty sure that OpenAI is doing it and it's happy to pay the fines. If you can even prove it at any point that they really used some of your data, they are going to pay the fines, like they have paid a lot of other fines, and it's just it's not even relevant for the budgeting, the fines that they have to pay.
Well, they're not even going to pay the fines because they'll just keep you stuck in litigation forever, and you can't afford the litigation. And it's similar, with the evaluators. I mean, how many evaluators really have a pro account? How many just chuck it in just to see, and who cares who's going to find out?
Yeah,
it's this bottomless pit of misinformation, and then you can, I mean, maybe that would be something to push to the commission, that because what I saw, what you were presenting, and the stuff that I've seen myself is relatively general, right? But if you give precise things, it's like you have to use ChatGPT Pro, and on this page, click this thing. Or you use Mistral AI with these settings, which is and you can restrict it. Because I think the problem that a lot of people have is they go on Google and look for what it says, which is the first mistake. Instead of going into something like Claude, and then they're sort of stuck and they don't know, because the thing is, I mean, I'm trying to stay ahead of this, and I'm putting a lot of time and effort into learning about it, and I have no fucking clue. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that's true, but I'm sure there's a steep learning curve for all of us. But we have a minute left.
Nothing. So, every time I talk to people like Daniel and other people, I'm like, Jesus Christ, it's so much bigger.
I know it's so much bigger, but we all have to start somewhere. And there's a question in the chat: do I get it that we all agree that we have to use AI for our proposal writing? I don't think it's a have to, as we said at the beginning, but it makes it certainly
you
for
can use a typewriter and
yeah.
I can, probably my opinion is, I mean, depending if you have an idea on developing a new PCR technology and it's $1 billion business, probably don't use it. If it's some sort of basic research and you're just afraid you might get spooked, and it's the information that you that you put in is used for the training at the later stage for the development of better models, and someone else might get this information later on. I think the risk is, yes, it's there, but it's so much lower than the benefits that you would get. But that's a personal decision, and a decision that you have to take for yourself, and you have to decide for yourself if you want to take it. For me, I think it's quite clear. I will get all the downsides anyhow. I can't avoid them, and I'm if that has not come across yet, I'm totally skeptical about the development. So I'm not an enthusiast about it, but I will get all the downsides. I can't help it. So I at least want to get the benefits of it as well, and for that, I make use of the tools.
I think that's a good final statement. We have to close. I'm afraid it's 1 o'clock. I promised you a on-time ending. I see raised hands, Sibylle, but sorry, we have to finish. There were also unanswered questions. We tried to answer a few in writing. Daniel also answered a few in writing. So we will share the recording. We will share the presentations once I get it. I can't promise you it's all going to be done before Christmas, but we'll try our best. And once you exit, there's feedback opening up. So please give us some feedback how you like this event. And yeah, I thanks to all our excellent speakers and statement givers. I think it was a truly inspiring seminar. Thanks so much.